Welcome to another soothing journey through the annals of history. Tonight, we'll explore the less glamorous aspects of Viking life that are sure to lull you into a peaceful slumber. Our first tale delves into why you, a modern person, wouldn't last a day as a Viking raider. As we sail through the fjords of time, we'll also uncover the surprisingly mundane lives of medieval peasants, the tedious tasks of ancient Egyptian pyramid builders, and the mind-numbing routines of Roman senators. These stories, devoid of excitement and filled with historical monotony, are designed to gently guide you towards sleep. So, settle in, close your eyes, and let the waves of boring history wash over you. Remember, the duller the facts, the sweeter your dreams will be. Now let's begin our first snooze-worthy tale about the harsh realities of Viking life. If you're enjoying this soothing journey through history, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us create more calming content to aid your sleep. Now, let's continue our peaceful exploration of Viking life. As the first rays of sunlight peek over the horizon, you're jolted awake by the harsh sound of a horn. Welcome to your life as a Viking raider. It's time to start your day, and believe me, it's not going to be an easy one. You groggily open your eyes, finding yourself in a cramped longhouse. The air is thick with the smell of smoke, unwashed bodies, and last night's mead. Your bed, a simple straw mattress on the floor, covered with furs that have seen better days. As you sit up, your back aches from the hard surface you've been sleeping on. You're surrounded by your fellow raiders, all in various states of waking up. Some are already on their feet, while others grumble and turn over, trying to steal a few more moments of sleep. But there's no time for laziness in Viking society. The day's work awaits, and it starts now. You stretch, feeling the soreness in your muscles from yesterday's training. Every day is a test of strength and endurance, and today will be no different. First things first, your morning ablutions. Don't expect anything resembling modern hygiene standards. You make your way outside to a nearby stream, the cold air biting at your skin. The water is frigid, but it helps wake you up as you splash your face and rinse your mouth. Teeth brushing, that's not really a thing here. Instead, you might chew on some herbs or use a twig as a rudimentary toothbrush. Your breath won't be minty fresh, but at least it might be slightly less offensive than some of your companions. As for bathing, that's a weekly affair at best. Today isn't bath day, so you'll have to make do with a quick wipe down using a damp cloth. The concept of daily showers is centuries away, and you're starting to understand why the Vikings had such a reputation for being, well, less than fragrant. Now it's time to get dressed. Your clothing is simple but practical. You pull on a rough linen tunic, followed by woolen trousers. Over this goes a leather jerkin for added protection. No silk or fine cotton here. Everything is designed for durability and function. Your feet are covered with simple leather shoes, and you wrap leg bindings from ankle to knee. These not only provide warmth, but also protect your legs from thorns and undergrowth when moving through forests. As you dress, you can't help but notice the lack of variety in your wardrobe. Fashion isn't a priority when you're focused on survival and conquest. The colors are muted, mostly browns, grays, and undyed fabrics. Any decorative elements are minimal and usually have a practical purpose, like reinforced seams for added strength. With your basic outfit on, it's time to don your armor. This isn't the full battle gear that's reserved for raids and battles. For daily training and work, you wear a simple mail shirt. It's heavy, weighing about 10-12 kilograms, and you can already feel the strain on your shoulders as you put it on. Next comes your belt, from which hangs your seeks, a large knife that serves as both a tool and a weapon. You check its edge, ensuring it's sharp enough for the day's tasks. A blunt blade could mean the difference between life and death in a skirmish. With your basic gear on, you step outside the longhouse. The village is already bustling with activity. Women are tending to fires, preparing the morning meal. Children are fetching water or helping with chores. Every member of the community has a role to play, and idleness is not tolerated. The smell of cooking food draws you to the communal eating area. Breakfast is a simple affair, a bowl of porridge made from barley or oats, maybe flavored with some dried fruit if you're lucky. On special occasions, there might be bread, but that's a rare treat. As you eat, you listen to the plans for the day. There's talk of a potential raid in the near future, which means today will be filled with preparations and training. You'll need to check your weapons, practice your fighting skills, and help ready the longships. After breakfast, it's time to start the day's work. First on the agenda is weapons practice. You head to the training grounds where other raiders are already gathering. The air rings with the sound of clashing swords and the thud of axes hitting wooden targets. You begin with sword drills, practicing your swings and blocks. The sword is heavy and your arms quickly start to ache, but you push through the pain. In battle, fatigue could mean death. You move on to shield practice, learning to use it not just for defense but as a weapon in its own right. As the morning progresses, you switch to axe throwing. Accuracy is crucial here. A well-thrown axe can take down an enemy before they even reach you. You aim at wooden targets, trying to hit the same spot consistently. It's harder than it looks, and your frustration grows with each miss. By midday, you're drenched in sweat and your muscles are screaming, but there's no rest for the weary. It's time to help with the longship preparations. You join a group hauling a ship out of the water for repairs and maintenance. The work is backbreaking, the ship is heavy, and it takes the coordinated effort of dozens of men to move it. You strain and heave, your feet slipping in the mud. Finally, after what seems like hours, the ship is on dry land. Now comes the task of checking every inch of the vessel. You look for any signs of damage or wear, knowing that a small leak could spell disaster on the open sea. You help replace worn ropes, mend tears in the sail, and recock the hull seams. As you work, you listen to the older raiders tell stories of past voyages, tales of storms that nearly sank their ships, of narrow escapes from enemy forces, of rich monasteries ripe for plundering. These stories both excite and terrify you. The life of a Viking raider is one of constant danger and uncertainty. The afternoon wears on and your stomach begins to growl, but there's no time for a leisurely lunch. You grab a quick bite, some dried meat and a hunk of hard cheese, and wash it down with weak ale. The food is bland and tough, nothing like the varied and flavorful meals you're used to in the modern world. As the sun begins to dip lower in the sky, you're called back to the training grounds. This time it's for group combat practice. You and your fellow raiders form shield walls, learning to move and fight as a unit. It's hot, cramped, and chaotic, but you begin to understand the power of this formation. The day's training finally ends as dusk approaches. You're exhausted, every muscle in your body aching, but there's still work to be done. You help bring in the day's catch from the fishing boats, gut and clean the fish, and assist in preparing the evening meal. As night falls, you gather with the other raiders for dinner. The meal is simple but filling: roasted fish, some root vegetables, and more bread if you're fortunate. You wash it down with mead, savoring the sweet taste after a long day of labor. After dinner, there's time for socializing. Stories are shared around the fire, songs are sung, and games are played. But you can't fully relax. You know that at any moment the horn could sound, signaling a surprise attack or the start of a raid. As you prepare for bed, you reflect on your day as a Viking raider. It was hard, physically demanding, and fraught with potential danger. And tomorrow will be much the same. This is not a life for the weak or the faint-hearted. It's a constant struggle for survival, where only the strong thrive. You settle onto your straw mattress, your body aching but your mind alert. As you drift off to sleep, you wonder if you'll ever truly get used to this harsh life. But then again, you don't have much choice. This is the world of the Viking raider, and it waits for no one. As we continue our journey through the harsh realities of Viking life, let's set sail on a typical raiding expedition. The year is 865 AD, and you find yourself aboard a longship, ready to embark on a perilous voyage across the North Sea. The first challenge you face is the ship itself. Viking longships, while revolutionary for their time, were far from comfortable. These vessels, typically measuring between 17 and 37 meters in length, were open-decked, leaving you exposed to the elements. As you settle onto the hard wooden planks that will serve as your seat, bed, and living space for the next several weeks, you quickly realize that comfort is a luxury you've left behind on land. The narrow hull means you're pressed shoulder to shoulder with your fellow raiders, with barely enough room to stretch your legs. The longship's shallow draft, which allows it to navigate both open seas and shallow rivers, also means that every wave is felt acutely. The constant rocking and pitching of the ship would likely induce severe seasickness in modern travelers, and you'd be no exception. But seasickness is the least of your worries. The North Sea is notoriously treacherous, with sudden storms that can whip up waves as high as 20 meters. These monstrous swells would toss your ship around like a toy, and you'd find yourself clinging to whatever you could grab, praying to the Norse gods for survival. Speaking of gods, you might be surprised to learn that Vikings were quite superstitious sailors. They believed in sea monsters like the Kraken and the Midgard serpent, which they thought could capsize ships and drag entire crews to their doom. Every unexplained noise or shadow in the water would send a shiver of fear through the crew. Now let's talk about your daily routine on this floating wooden world. Your day would start at dawn and you'd immediately be put to work. If you're not rowing, and yes, despite popular belief, Viking ships did use oars in addition to sails, you'd be bailing water, mending sails, or performing other essential maintenance tasks. Rowing, by the way, was no easy feat. You'd be expected to maintain a steady rhythm for hours on end, your muscles burning and blistering under the strain. The oars were heavy, and the constant exposure to salt water would leave your hands raw and painful. Meals on board were simple and monotonous. The staple diet consisted of dried meat, fish, and hard bread. Fresh water was a precious commodity, carefully rationed throughout the journey. Often it would become stale and unpalatable after a few days, but you'd have no choice but to drink it. Personal hygiene, forget about it. There were no bathrooms on Viking ships. You'd relieve yourself over the side of the boat or in a bucket, which would then be emptied overboard. The stench of unwashed bodies, combined with the odors of stale food and seasickness, would be overwhelming. Sleep when you could get it would be fitful at best. You'd curl up on the hard deck, using your shield as a pillow, always ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. The constant noise of creaking wood, flapping sails, and snoring crewmates would make true rest a rare luxury. But perhaps the most challenging aspect of life aboard a Viking longship was the psychological toll. Weeks could pass with nothing but endless sea on all sides. The isolation and monotony could drive even the hardiest warriors to the brink of madness. And let's not forget the ever-present danger. Even in calm seas, there was always the risk of running aground on hidden shoals or colliding with icebergs in the northern waters. A single mistake in navigation could leave you stranded far from any hope of rescue. Then there were the other dangers that lurked on the horizon. Rival Viking groups, other seafaring peoples, or the naval forces of the lands you were planning to raid could all pose a deadly threat. Naval battles in this era were brutal affairs, often ending in hand-to-hand combat as ships rammed into each other. If you were unlucky enough to fall overboard during a storm or battle, your chances of survival were slim. The heavy wool and leather clothing typical of Viking attire would quickly become waterlogged, dragging you down into the icy depths. Few Vikings knew how to swim, and even if you did, the cold waters of the North Sea could induce hypothermia within minutes. Yet despite all these hardships, the Vikings persevered. Their ships were their lifelines, the key to their success as raiders and traders. The longship was more than just a vessel. It was a floating community, a home away from home for these intrepid seafarers. As your journey nears its end and land finally appears on the horizon, you might feel a sense of relief, but don't relax just yet. The most dangerous part of your adventure is about to begin. The raid itself would bring its own set of challenges and perils, testing your strength, courage, and will to survive in ways you've never imagined. So as we prepare to step off this wooden vessel onto foreign shores, ask yourself, after enduring weeks of discomfort, danger, and deprivation at sea, do you still have the strength and resolve to face the battles that lie ahead? The life of a Viking raider was not for the faint of heart, and your journey has only just begun. As we delve deeper into the harsh realities of Viking raider life, let's turn our attention to the brutal and unforgiving nature of combat. The romanticized image of fearless warriors charging into battle with gleaming axes and swords is far from the truth of what these Norse raiders actually experienced. First and foremost, let's dispel the myth of constant raiding. Contrary to popular belief, Vikings didn't spend all their time pillaging and plundering. Raiding was a seasonal activity, typically conducted during the summer months when weather conditions were more favorable for sea travel. The rest of the year was dedicated to farming, fishing, and other mundane tasks essential for survival in the harsh Scandinavian climate. When raids did occur, they were far from the glorious battles depicted in modern media. Most raids were quick hit-and-run affairs, targeting poorly defended coastal settlements and monasteries. The goal was to grab as much loot as possible and escape before any organized resistance could be mounted. This meant that many Viking raiders never experienced large-scale battles or prolonged combat. However, when combat did occur, it was brutal, chaotic, and often over quickly. The romantic notion of honorable one-on-one duels was largely a fantasy. In reality, Viking combat was a messy, crowded affair where survival often depended more on luck than skill. Let's consider the weapons and armor typical of a Viking raider. While we often picture Vikings wielding massive two-handed axes, the reality was far more practical. Most raiders carried a round shield, a spear, and perhaps a simple one-handed axe or sword if they could afford it. Only the wealthiest warriors could afford high-quality swords or elaborate armor. Speaking of armor, forget the horned helmets. Those were never actually used in combat. Most Viking raiders wore little to no armor at all. A lucky few might have had a simple iron helmet and a padded leather jacket. This lack of protection meant that even minor wounds could quickly become fatal in the unsanitary conditions of the time. Now imagine yourself as a Viking raider, standing shoulder to shoulder with your fellow warriors on the deck of a longship. The smell of salt water and unwashed bodies fills your nostrils as you approach an enemy shore. Your heart races, knowing that in moments you'll be fighting for your life. As you leap from the ship into the shallow water, the weight of your weapons and the drag of your wet clothes immediately slow you down. You struggle to maintain your footing on the slippery rocks as you charge towards the beach. Already, your lungs burn from the exertion. The clash of battle erupts around you. The air fills with the deafening roar of war cries, the clang of metal on metal, and the sickening thud of weapons meeting flesh. In the chaos, it's nearly impossible to distinguish friend from foe. You swing your weapon wildly, more concerned with keeping enemies at bay than landing precise blows. The physical toll of combat is immense. Within minutes, your arms ache from the weight of your shield and weapon. Your chest heaves as you struggle to catch your breath. Sweat and blood sting your eyes, obscuring your vision. The ground beneath your feet becomes treacherous, slick with blood and worse. And then there's the psychological impact. The sight of fallen comrades, the agonized screams of the wounded, the ever-present fear that the next blow could be your last, all of these combine to create a mental strain that few modern individuals could endure. Many Viking raiders likely suffered from what we now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder, though of course there was no understanding or treatment for such conditions at the time. Let's not forget the aftermath of battle. If you survive the initial fighting, you still face the risk of infection from even minor wounds. In an era before antibiotics or proper medical care, a small cut could lead to a slow, painful death from sepsis. Those who survived often bore horrific scars or debilitating injuries that would plague them for the rest of their lives. It's also worth noting that not all Viking raids were successful. Many longships never returned home, lost to storms, enemy action, or simply running out of supplies. The life expectancy of a Viking raider was not long, and the odds of dying a peaceful death in old age were slim. Even if you survived and returned home with plunder, your troubles weren't over. The harsh Scandinavian winters meant that food was often scarce, and the loot from raids had to be carefully rationed to last until the next raiding season. There was also the constant threat of rival clans or retaliatory attacks from those you had raided. In conclusion, the life of a Viking raider was far from the glamorous adventure often portrayed in popular culture. It was a brutal, short existence filled with hardship, violence, and constant danger. The reality of combat was a far cry from the heroic tales we often hear. It was a world where survival was never guaranteed, and the price of glory was often paid in blood and suffering. As we drift off to sleep, let's be grateful that we live in a time where such brutal combat is not a part of our daily lives. The Viking raiders of old may have left an indelible mark on history, but few of us would truly want to trade places with them, even for a day. As the sun begins to set on your first day as a Viking raider, you might think the worst is behind you. But the evening brings its own set of challenges and discomforts that would make even the hardiest modern person long for home. With the day's raiding done, you and your fellow Vikings make camp for the night. The first order of business is to secure the loot you've acquired. Heavy chests, valuable trinkets, and perhaps even a few captives must be guarded. You're assigned a shift of night watch, which means you'll be losing precious sleep. As you settle in for your meager evening meal, you realize how different it is from what you're used to. There's no warm, home-cooked dinner waiting for you. Instead, you're handed a portion of dried meat, perhaps some hard bread, and if you're lucky, a bit of cheese. The food is tough and bland, nothing like the flavorful and varied diet you're accustomed to in the modern world. You watch as some of your fellow raiders pass around a drinking horn filled with ale. It's warm and flat, nothing like the cold, crisp beverages you enjoy at home. But it's all tea narrator. As night falls, the temperature drops rapidly. You pull your cloak tighter around you, but it does little to ward off the chill. There are no cozy sleeping bags or insulated tents here. You'll be sleeping on the hard ground with only a thin blanket for comfort. The luckier raiders might have animal skins to lie on, but you're not among them. The sounds of the night surround you. In the distance, you hear the howl of wolves, reminding you that danger lurks even in the darkness. Closer by, the snoring of your fellow Vikings and the occasional groan of pain from those injured in the day's fighting create a cacophony that makes sleep elusive. As you lie there trying to find a comfortable position on the uneven ground, your mind wanders to thoughts of home. You miss your soft bed, your climate-controlled room, and the peace of mind that comes with modern security. Here, in this harsh 9th century world, you feel exposed and vulnerable. Your turn for night watch comes all too soon. You're shaken awake after what feels like mere minutes of fitful sleep. Groggy and stiff from the hard ground, you force yourself to your feet. You're handed a weapon and told to keep your eyes peeled for any sign of trouble. As you pace the perimeter of the camp, your senses are on high alert. Every rustle in the bushes could be an enemy scout. Every distant animal cry could be a signal from an approaching force. The weight of responsibility sits heavy on your shoulders. If you fail in your duty, it could mean death for you and your companions. The hours of your watch drag by interminably. Your feet ache, your eyes strain in the darkness, and fatigue weighs on you like a physical burden. You find yourself longing for the convenience of modern security systems, night vision technology, or even just a reliable flashlight. When your watch finally ends, you stumble back to your sleeping spot, only to find that the ground seems even harder and colder than before. Sleep comes in fits and starts, interrupted by the changing of the guard, the restless movements of your fellow raiders, and your own discomfort. As dawn approaches, you're roused once again. There's no time for a leisurely wake-up or a hot shower to ease your aching muscles. Instead, you're expected to be alert and ready for another day of raiding almost immediately. You force down another meal of dried meat and hard bread, your stomach already longing for the variety and ease of modern cuisine. Looking around the camp, you notice that some of your fellow raiders are nursing wounds from the previous day. There are no antibiotics here, no sterile bandages or painkillers. Injuries that would be minor inconveniences in the modern world could easily become life-threatening in this era. As the camp begins to stir with activity, you realize that this grueling cycle will repeat day after day. The constant vigilance, the physical hardships, the lack of comfort and hygiene, all of these would wear down even the toughest modern person in a matter of days. You watch as the Viking leaders begin to plan the day's activities. There's talk of moving further inland, of potential targets and the risks they might pose. You realize that each day brings new dangers, new challenges, and no guarantee of survival. As you prepare for another day of raiding, you can't help but reflect on how ill-prepared you are for this life. The physical demands alone would be enough to break most modern people, but it's the constant stress and uncertainty that truly sets this world apart from your own. The comforts and securities you take for granted in the 21st century are thrown into sharp relief against the harsh realities of Viking life. Every aspect of your existence narrator. As you strap on your armor and check your weapons, you realize that surviving as a Viking raider requires a mental and physical toughness that few modern people possess. It's not just about strength and skill in battle. It's about enduring day after day of discomfort, danger, and uncertainty. The sun rises on your second day as a Viking raider, and you know that the challenges ahead will be just as daunting as those you've already faced. As you march out with your fellow Vikings, you can't help but long for the safety and comfort of your own time, knowing that you wouldn't last much longer in this unforgiving world. As we conclude our exploration of Viking raider life, it's clear that the romanticized image of these seafaring warriors often falls short of the harsh reality they faced. The life of a Viking raider was far from glamorous, filled with constant dangers, physical hardships, and uncertain outcomes. Let's recap the key reasons why most modern individuals would struggle to survive even a single day as a Viking raider. First and foremost, the physical demands were extraordinary. The strength and endurance required to row longships for hours on end, engage in brutal hand-to-hand combat, and endure harsh weather conditions would push even the fittest among us to our limits. Then there's the constant threat of violence. Viking raids were not merely adventures, they were high-stakes gambles with life and death. Every raid carried the risk of injury, capture, or death. The psychological toll of living in this state of perpetual danger would be immense for those accustomed to modern comforts and safety. We must also consider the primitive living conditions. The lack of basic hygiene, proper medical care, and comfortable accommodations would be a shock to our systems. Sleeping on hard wooden planks, eating preserved foods that were often on the verge of spoiling, and dealing with parasites and diseases without modern medicine, these were daily realities for Viking raiders. The social dynamics within Viking crews were also far removed from our modern understanding of workplace relationships. Loyalty was paramount, but so was the need to prove one's worth constantly. The pressure to participate in raids, even when faced with overwhelming odds, would be psychologically taxing for many of us. Moreover, the ethical dilemmas posed by raiding would be challenging for most modern individuals to reconcile. The act of pillaging, destroying property, and potentially harming innocent civilians goes against the moral codes ingrained in many societies today. The cognitive dissonance experienced by participating in such acts would be difficult to overcome. Lastly, we must acknowledge the stark difference in societal values and worldviews. The Viking Age was a time of different religious beliefs, superstitions, and cultural norms. Adapting to this radically different mindset, where fate and the gods played a central role in daily life, would require a complete paradigm shift for most modern people. In conclusion, while the idea of being a Viking raider might seem exciting from the safe distance of centuries, the reality was far more challenging and brutal than most of us could handle. It serves as a reminder of how far human society has progressed in terms of comfort, safety, and ethical standards. Perhaps the next time you find yourself romanticizing the Viking Age, you'll pause to appreciate the relative ease and security of modern life. As we leave behind the brutal world of Viking raiders, we turn our attention to another fascinating yet perilous era of history. Our next journey takes us to the heart of ancient Rome, where gladiators fought for their lives in the Grand Colosseum. Prepare yourself for a glimpse into the harsh realities of life as a Roman gladiator, where survival was never guaranteed and glory came at a steep price. As we journey through the annals of history, our next stop takes us to the heart of the Roman Empire. Picture yourself in ancient Rome, where the roar of the crowd echoes through the streets and the air is thick with anticipation. You're not just any Roman citizen, you've found yourself in the sandals of a gladiator. The life of a gladiator was far from the glamorous spectacle often portrayed in modern media. These warriors of the arena faced a brutal existence where each day could be their last. But before we delve into the harsh realities of gladiatorial life, let's set the stage for our time-traveling adventure. Imagine waking up in a dimly lit cell, the smell of sweat and iron permeating the air. You're surrounded by other men, some hardened criminals, others prisoners of war, and a few volunteers who chose this life for a chance at glory or to escape crushing debt. This is your new family, bound together by the chains of fate and the promise of either fame or gruesome death. As you stretch your aching muscles, you realize that your body is not your own. It's a finely tuned weapon, honed through relentless training and a strict diet. The Lanista, your trainer and owner, has invested heavily in your potential, and he expects a return on that investment, either through your victories or your memorable death. The morning begins with a meager meal, a blend of barley, beans, and dried fruit. It's designed to build strength without adding bulk that could slow you down in the arena. As you chew the bland mixture, you can't help but wonder if this will be your last meal. After breakfast, it's time for training. The Ludus, or Gladiator School, is a place of constant activity. The sound of metal striking metal fills the air as your fellow gladiators practice their techniques. You're handed a wooden sword, its weight a poor imitation of the real thing, but it serves its purpose. Your instructor, a grizzled veteran who survived his own time in the arena, barks orders as you go through your drills. Move your feet, guard your flank, strike with purpose. His words are punctuated by the occasional crack of a whip, a reminder of the price of failure. As you train, you can't help but notice the variety of fighting styles around you. There's the heavily armored Murmillo, the swift Retiarius with his net and trident, and the exotic Scissor with his tube-like arm guard. Each style has its strengths and weaknesses, and you know that your life may one day depend on exploiting those weaknesses. The training is grueling, designed to push you to your limits and beyond. You practice footwork, weapon techniques, and endurance exercises until your muscles scream for mercy. But T-Narrator, as the sun reaches its zenith, you're given a brief respite. You use this time to tend to your wounds, both old and new. The scars that crisscross your body tell the story of your journey thus far. Each one is a reminder of a lesson learned, often painfully. In the afternoon, you engage in mock battles with your fellow gladiators. These fights are intense, with wooden weapons replaced by blunted metal ones. The risk of serious injury is real, but it's nothing compared to what awaits in the arena. You learn to read your opponent's body language, to anticipate their moves, and to strike with precision. As you spar, you can't help but form bonds with your fellow gladiators. These men, who may one day be tasked with ending your life, become your brothers in arms. You share jokes, stories, and dreams of freedom. But always in the back of your mind is the knowledge that these friendships are fleeting. The day's training concludes with a lecture on gladiatorial ethics and showmanship. Your Lannister reminds you that you're not just fighters, you're entertainers. The crowd's favor can mean the difference between life and death, so you must learn to play to their desires. As evening falls, you're led back to your cell. Your body aches, but your mind is sharp. You know that tomorrow brings more of the same unless it's the day you're called to fight in the arena. You lie down on your hard pallet, your dreams filled with visions of sand, blood, and glory. But the life of a gladiator isn't just about training and fighting. There's a complex social structure within the ludus. At the top are the doctors, the trainers who were once successful gladiators themselves. They command respect and fear in equal measure. Below them are the veterans, those who have survived multiple battles and earned a reputation. As a novice, you find yourself at the bottom of this hierarchy. You're expected to show deference to those above you, to learn from their experience, and to prove your worth through dedication and skill. It's a cutthroat world where weakness is exploited and strength is revered. Despite the harsh conditions, there's a strange sense of camaraderie among the gladiators. You share a common fate, a common struggle. In the evenings when the training is done, you gather to share stories, play dice games, and even write graffiti on the walls of your quarters, leaving your mark for future generations to discover. But not all gladiators are men. You've heard whispers of female gladiators, rare but not unheard of. They face the same dangers and brutality as their male counterparts, perhaps even more so given the novelty of their presence in the arena. As the days blur together, you find yourself changing. Your body becomes a weapon, your mind a strategic battlefield. You learn to embrace the persona given to you, whether you're cast as a noble hero or a villainous brute. This role-playing is as much a part of your survival as your combat skills. The constant threat of death hangs over you like a shadow. You've seen comrades fall in training accidents, succumb to infections from minor wounds, or simply disappear, taken away in the night for reasons unknown. Each loss is a stark reminder of your own mortality. Yet, despite the hardships, there's a glimmer of hope. Successful gladiators can earn their freedom, win fame and fortune, and even become celebrities in Roman society. This promise of a better life keeps you going, pushing through the pain and fear. As we conclude this introduction to the life of a Roman gladiator, remember that this was just a glimpse into their world. The reality was far more complex, brutal, and nuanced than we can fully explore in this short time. But perhaps now, as you drift off to sleep, you'll have a new appreciation for the men and women who lived and died by the sword in ancient Rome's arenas. As we delve deeper into the annals of history, let's turn our attention to the world of ancient Rome and the life of a gladiator. While popular culture often romanticizes these warriors, the reality of their existence was far from glamorous. Let's explore the grueling training regimen that shaped these fighters into the spectacles of the arena. Gladiatorial training began with a harsh introduction to a new way of life. Upon entering the ludus or gladiator school, recruits were stripped of their former identities. Many were slaves or prisoners of war, while some were volunteers seeking fame and fortune. Regardless of their origins, all faced the same brutal reality. The day for a gladiator in training began before dawn. As the first light crept over the horizon, the lanista or trainer would rouse the recruits from their sparse sleeping quarters. Sleep deprivation was a constant companion, as late-night training sessions were common to build endurance and mental fortitude. The morning routine started with a grueling exercise regimen. Recruits would run laps around the training grounds, their feet pounding the dirt as they built stamina and leg strength. This was followed by intense calisthenics, push-ups, squats, and various forms of weight training using rudimentary equipment like sandbags and stone weights. Nutrition played a crucial role in a gladiator's training. Contrary to what one might expect, gladiators were not lean and muscular like modern athletes. Instead, they were intentionally fed a high-calorie diet rich in carbohydrates and plant proteins. This diet, often referred to as gladiator barley, was designed to build a layer of protective fat over their muscles. The reasoning behind this diet was twofold. Firstly, the extra padding protected vital organs and blood vessels from shallow cuts, allowing for more dramatic-looking, yet less lethal, combat. Secondly, it gave the gladiators a more imposing appearance, making them seem larger and more formidable in the arena. After their morning meal, gladiators would begin weapons training. This was a methodical and repetitive process, focusing on mastering specific fighting styles. Each recruit was assigned a gladiator class, such as Murmillo, Thrix, or Retiarius, each with its own unique weapons and armor. For example, a Murmillo would train with a large rectangular shield, a gladius short sword, and wear a helmet with a fish-like crest. They would spend hours practicing footwork, shield positioning, and sword strikes against wooden posts or practice dummies. The constant repetition was designed to make these movements second nature in the heat of battle. The afternoon would often involve sparring sessions. These mock battles were conducted with wooden weapons to reduce the risk of serious injury, but they were far from gentle. Trainers would pair up gladiators of different styles to help them learn how to combat various opponents they might face in the arena. These sparring matches were intensely physical and often resulted in bruises, sprains, and occasionally more severe injuries. The Lannister would observe closely, shouting instructions and critiques. Any sign of weakness or hesitation was met with harsh punishment, often in the form of whippings or reduced rations. As the day wore on, gladiators would engage in specialized training exercises. Some would practice fighting while carrying heavy weights to build strength and endurance. Others might train blindfolded to heighten their other senses and improve their reactions to unexpected attacks. One particularly grueling exercise involved gladiators holding their weapons and shields at arm's length for extended periods. This built the specific muscles needed for combat and increased their endurance during long fights. Trainers would walk among the recruits, striking anyone who lowered their arms before the allotted time was up. The evening brought no respite from training. Gladiators would often engage in mental exercises, studying the tactics and strategies of successful fighters. They would learn about the preferences of the crowd, the importance of showmanship, and how to make their fights more entertaining without necessarily increasing the risk of death. Throughout their training, gladiators were subject to strict discipline. The ludus operated under a rigid hierarchy, with the Lannister at the top, followed by veteran gladiators, and then the new recruits at the bottom. Infractions were met with severe punishments, ranging from beatings to reduced food rations or even execution for serious offenses. Despite the harshness of their lives, many gladiators developed a strong sense of camaraderie. They lived, trained, and often died together, forming bonds that transcended their diverse origins. This brotherhood was encouraged by the Lannisters, as it fostered loyalty and improved teamwork during paired combats in the arena. As night fell, the gladiators would retire to their cells, exhausted from the day's exertions. Their sleeping quarters were sparse and often crowded, with little more than a thin pallet on the floor for comfort. Yet even in sleep, their training continued. Many reported dreaming of combat, their minds rehearsing the movements and strategies they had practiced during the day. This grueling routine would continue day after day, month after month, sometimes for years before a gladiator was deemed ready for the arena. The constant physical and mental strain took its toll, and many did not survive the training process. Those who did emerge were hardened warriors, their bodies and minds honed into lethal weapons for the entertainment of the Roman populace. As we reflect on the life of a gladiator in training, it becomes clear why you wouldn't last a day in their sandals. The combination of physical exertion, mental strain, harsh discipline, and the constant specter of death created an existence that few modern individuals could endure. Yet, for those who survived, the roar of the crowd and the chance at glory provided a powerful motivation to persevere through the daily torments of gladiatorial training. As we delve into the daily life of an ancient Roman gladiator, prepare to be transported to a world where life and death hung in the balance, and the roar of the crowd could mean either glory or doom. Contrary to popular belief, not all gladiators were slaves or criminals. Some were volunteers seeking fame and fortune. However, regardless of their origins, all gladiators lived under strict rules and rigorous training regimens. Your day as a gladiator would begin at dawn. The Lannister or gladiator trainer would wake you with a loud call. You'd rise from your small, cramped cell in the ludus, the gladiatorial school, where you lived alongside other fighters. First on the agenda would be a hearty breakfast. Gladiators were known as barley men due to their high carbohydrate diet. Your morning meal might consist of barley porridge, beans, and dried fruit. This diet was designed to build a layer of protective fat to cushion blows and make surface wounds more dramatic for the audience. After breakfast, you don your sublegaculum, a loincloth that was your primary clothing for training. Then, you'd head to the training grounds for your first session of the day. Morning training was intense and diverse. You might start with running and jumping exercises to build stamina and agility. Then, you'd move on to strength training, which could involve lifting weights or practicing with wooden weapons that were heavier than the real ones used in the arena. Your trainer would drill you relentlessly in the fighting techniques specific to your gladiator class. Whether you were a Murmillo with a large rectangular shield and short sword, or a Retiarius wielding a net and trident, you'd spend hours perfecting your moves. Midday would bring a break for lunch, another protein and carbohydrate-rich meal to fuel your afternoon training. You might have some downtime to rest or socialize with fellow gladiators, but it wouldn't last long. Afternoon training would focus more on combat scenarios and sparring. You'd practice with wooden weapons against training posts or other gladiators, always under the watchful eye of your Lanista. Injuries during training were common, but you'd be treated by the Ludus doctor to ensure you remained in fighting shape. As a gladiator, you'd also need to learn to fight different types of opponents. Your afternoon might include studying the techniques and weaknesses of other gladiator classes, preparing you for any matchup in the arena. Evening would bring your final meal of the day, often accompanied by a massage to soothe your aching muscles. Gladiators were valuable assets and their health was closely monitored. You'd receive regular checkups and a balanced diet to keep you in peak condition. After dinner, you might have some free time. Contrary to the notion that gladiators lived in constant misery, many enjoyed certain privileges. You could play dice games, engage in religious practices, or even write letters to fans or family. However, your evenings wouldn't always be relaxing. You'd often be required to study strategy and tactics, learning from past fights and preparing for future ones. The Lanista might also give lectures on the psychology of combat and crowd-pleasing techniques. As night fell, you'd return to your cell. Despite the rigors of your day, sleep might not come easily. The constant awareness of your mortality and the pressure of upcoming fights could weigh heavily on your mind. It's important to note that not all days followed this routine. In the lead-up to games, your training would intensify. You'd practice your entrance to the arena, perfect your salute to the Emperor, and rehearse set-piece battles that were sometimes part of the spectacle. On the day of a fight, your routine would be entirely different. You'd wake early, perhaps offering prayers to the gods for protection. A light meal would be followed by a thorough medical examination to ensure you were fit to fight. Then came the preparation for battle. You'd be oiled and rubbed down to make your skin slippery and your muscles gleam. Your armor would be carefully fitted, each piece a potential lifesaver in the arena. As you waited for your turn to fight, you'd hear the roar of the crowd, the clash of weapons, and the cries of the wounded. The anticipation would be almost unbearable, a mix of fear and excitement coursing through your veins. But whether it was a day of training or a day of combat, one thing remained constant, the knowledge that each day could be your last. This awareness shaped every aspect of a gladiator's life, from their rigorous training to their often fatalistic outlook. Despite the dangers, many gladiators took pride in their profession. Success in the arena could bring wealth, fame, and even freedom. Some gladiators became celebrities, with their exploits celebrated in graffiti and art across the Roman world. However, the life of a gladiator was ultimately one of violence and spectacle. Your daily routine was designed to prepare you for the moment when you'd stand in the arena, facing an opponent equally trained and equally desperate to survive. As we conclude this glimpse into the daily life of a Roman gladiator, consider how different it is from your own routine. The constant physical demands, the ever-present threat of death, and the peculiar mix of celebrity and servitude created a lifestyle unlike any other in history. In our next segment, we'll explore another aspect of ancient life that might surprise you. But for now, let the echoes of the arena fade and allow the soothing embrace of sleep to envelop you. As we journey through the annals of history, let's turn our attention to the blood-soaked sands of ancient Rome. The gladiatorial arena, a spectacle of violence and entertainment, has long captured our imaginations. But the reality of being a gladiator was far from the glamorous depictions we often see in modern media. Imagine yourself transported back to the bustling streets of Rome in the 1st century AD. You've been captured in battle, or perhaps you're a slave who's been sentenced to fight in the arena. Your life is about to change dramatically as you enter the brutal world of the gladiators. Your training begins at a ludus, a gladiatorial school. Here, you're not just learning how to fight, you're being molded into a commodity, a piece of property to be bought, sold, and wagered upon. The Lanista, the owner of the ludus, sees you not as a person, but as an investment. Your days are filled with grueling physical training. You're pushed to your limits, building strength and endurance, but it's not just about brute force. You must learn the intricacies of various weapons and fighting styles. The Retiarius with his net and trident, the Murmillo with his large rectangular shield and short sword, The Threeks with his curved short sword and small round shield, each requires different skills and tactics. As you train, you quickly realize that your life expectancy has dramatically shortened. Many gladiators don't survive their first year in the arena. The constant physical strain, risk of injury during training, and the looming threat of death in combat weigh heavily on your mind. Your diet is carefully controlled. Contrary to what you might expect, you're not starved. In fact, you're fed a high-calorie diet to build muscle mass, but it's not the varied, balanced diet you might hope for. Your meals consist largely of barley, beans, and dried fruit. It's designed to fatten you up, to make you an impressive specimen in the arena, not for your health or longevity. Living conditions in the Ludus are far from comfortable. You share cramped quarters with other gladiators, sleeping on hard pallets in cells that are often damp and poorly ventilated. Privacy is non-existent, and the constant proximity to your fellow fighters breeds both camaraderie and tension. As your training progresses, you learn that being a gladiator is as much about showmanship as it is about fighting skill. The crowd doesn't just want to see blood, they want to be entertained. You're taught how to play to the audience, how to make your fights dramatic and exciting. It's a performance, but one where the stakes couldn't be higher. Finally, the day of your first fight arrives. You're marched into the arena, the roar of the crowd washing over you. The sand beneath your feet is stained with the blood of countless fighters who came before you. You feel the weight of your armor, the grip of your weapon in your hand. As you face your opponent, you realize that the myths of gladiators fighting to the death in every match are just that, myths. Most gladiatorial combats were not fought to the death. They were expensive to train and maintain, so owners were reluctant to lose their investments. However, this doesn't mean your life isn't in danger. Accidents happen, and if the crowd or the editor, the person hosting the games, decides your performance wasn't entertaining enough, you might find yourself at the wrong end of a blade. The fight itself is a blur of adrenaline and fear. You rely on your training, on the countless hours spent practicing forms and techniques, but nothing truly prepares you for the reality of combat. The clash of metal, the grunts of exertion, the cheers and jeers of the crowd, it all melds into a cacophony of chaos. If you survive your first bout, you'll face a new challenge, fame. Successful gladiators could become celebrities adored by the masses, but this fame is a double-edged sword. It brings privileges, better food, nicer quarters, even the attention of wealthy patrons, but it also increases the pressure. The crowd expects more from you with each fight, and falling short of those expectations could be fatal. As the years pass, if you're lucky enough to survive that long, you'll accumulate injuries. Broken bones, deep cuts, missing teeth, these are the badges of your profession. Medical care exists, but it's primitive by modern standards. Many gladiators live with chronic pain and disabilities from poorly healed wounds. The psychological toll is perhaps even greater than the physical. The constant threat of death, the pressure to perform, the dehumanizing treatment, all of these wear on your mind. Many gladiators struggle with what we would now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder. If you manage to survive long enough, you might earn your freedom. Some gladiators are granted a wooden sword, symbolizing their release from the arena, but even freedom comes with challenges. Many freed gladiators struggle to adjust to civilian life, finding it difficult to leave behind the adrenaline and fame of the arena. As we reflect on the life of a Roman gladiator, it becomes clear that the reality was far from the glorified images we often see. It was a life of hardship, pain, and constant danger. The gladiators were not just warriors, but slaves, performers, and commodities, trapped in a system that valued their lives only as long as they could entertain. So the next time you watch a movie depicting the grandeur of gladiatorial combat, remember the harsh reality behind the spectacle. The sand of the arena was soaked not just with blood, but with the sweat and tears of those who fought not for glory, but for survival in a world that saw them as less than human. As we conclude our journey through the life of an ancient Roman gladiator, it's clear that their existence was far from the glamorous spectacle often portrayed in modern media. The brutal reality of their daily lives, coupled with the constant threat of death, paints a sobering picture of this ancient profession. Let's recap the key reasons why you wouldn't last a day as a gladiator. First and foremost, the intense physical training would push your body to its absolute limits. The grueling exercises, strict diets, and constant combat practice would leave you exhausted and battered before you even set foot in the arena. Then there's the psychological toll, the constant fear of death, the pressure to perform for a bloodthirsty crowd, and the knowledge that your life could end at any moment would be mentally crushing. Many gladiators suffered from severe anxiety and depression, with some even choosing to take their own lives rather than face another day in the arena. The living conditions were equally harsh. Cramped, unsanitary quarters shared with other fighters, minimal personal freedom, and a lack of basic comforts would wear you down day after day. The poor diet, consisting mainly of barley and beans, would leave you malnourished and weak, hardly ideal for facing life-or-death combat situations. Speaking of combat, the sheer brutality of gladiatorial fights would be overwhelming. Imagine facing a highly trained opponent armed with deadly weapons, both of you expected to fight to the death or near death for the entertainment of thousands. The physical pain, the fear, and the adrenaline would be unlike anything you've ever experienced. Let's not forget the social stigma. As a gladiator, you would be considered little more than property, owned by your Lanista or gladiator school. Despite any fame you might achieve, you would still be seen as inferior by Roman society, with little hope of ever truly integrating into the world beyond the arena. The constant risk of injury or death would be ever present. Even if you survived your fights, the likelihood of suffering debilitating wounds or contracting infections from untreated injuries was extremely high. Medical care was primitive at best, and many gladiators died not from combat itself, but from complications following their battles. Finally, there's the psychological impact of taking human life. While some may have become desensitized to violence over time, the act of killing or severely injuring another person, often repeatedly, would take a tremendous toll on your mental health. The faces of those you've defeated would likely haunt your dreams, assuming you could sleep at all. In conclusion, while the life of a gladiator may seem exciting or even heroic from a distance, the reality was far more grim. The physical hardships, mental anguish, social isolation, and constant threat of death would make it nearly impossible for a modern person to survive even a single day in this brutal profession. It serves as a stark reminder of how far we've come as a society, and how fortunate we are to live in a time where such practices are confined to the pages of history. As we leave behind the treacherous world of Viking raiders, let's sail our longship through the mists of time to explore another fascinating aspect of history. Our next destination promises to be equally intriguing and perhaps just as perilous. So, settle in and prepare yourself for a journey that will challenge your perceptions of the past and test your mettle against the harsh realities of a bygone era. As we venture deeper into the annals of history, we encounter a figure both mysterious and unsettling, the medieval plague doctor. In the midst of Europe's darkest hours, these eerie practitioners emerged as a symbol of hope and fear. Let's explore why you wouldn't last a day as a medieval plague doctor, a profession that mixed primitive medicine with superstition and desperation. Picture yourself in the 14th century, a time when the Black Death ravaged Europe, claiming millions of lives. The air is thick with the stench of decay, and panic grips every town and village. It's in this nightmarish scenario that you don your bizarre costume, the trademark outfit of the plague doctor. First, let's talk about that infamous mask. It's not just a mask, it's a beak-shaped nightmare made of leather. The long, bird-like beak isn't a fashion statement, it's stuffed with aromatic herbs and straw. This was based on the miasma theory, which wrongly believed that bad smells carried disease. So you'd spend your day peering through glass eyepieces, struggling to breathe through a beak full of lavender, mint, and camphor. But the mask is just the beginning. Your entire body is encased in a waxed leather coat, gloves, boots, and a wide-brimmed hat. In the sweltering heat of summer or the bone-chilling cold of winter, you'd be sweating profusely or shivering uncontrollably. There's no comfort to be found in this outfit, designed more to terrify than to heal. Now imagine trying to examine patients in this getup. Your vision is severely limited, your hearing muffled, and your sense of touch dulled by thick gloves. You're more likely to trip over your own feet than to accurately diagnose a patient. And let's not forget, you're constantly aware that one tear in your suit, one moment of carelessness, could expose you to the very plague you're trying to combat. But what about your medical knowledge? Well, prepare to be disappointed. Despite the imposing appearance, most plague doctors were not trained physicians. Many were second-rate doctors or even charlatans looking to make a quick coin from desperate towns. Your medical education would be a hodgepodge of ancient Greek theories, medieval superstitions, and a dash of alchemy. Your typical day would start with a sense of dread. As you make your rounds through plague-infested streets, the sound of your approach sends children scurrying and adults crossing themselves in fear. You're a harbinger of death, after all. The weight of your cane, used to examine patients from a distance and sometimes to fend off the desperate, feels heavier with each step. Your treatments, let's just say they were more likely to harm than heal. Bloodletting was a favorite, based on the belief that draining bad blood could cure the plague. You might also prescribe a poultice of onions, herbs, and chopped up snake to be applied directly to the swollen, painful buboes characteristic of the plague. If you're feeling particularly medieval, you might even suggest drinking a glass of your own urine or sitting in a sewer to drive out the disease. One of your primary duties would be lancing and draining buboes, those painful, swollen lymph nodes filled with pus and bacteria. Imagine the smell, the sight, and the sounds as you perform this grisly task. Your stomach would churn, your hands would shake, and you'd constantly fight the urge to flee. But it's not just the physical challenges that would break you. The emotional toll of being a plague doctor is immense. You'd witness entire families wiped out, villages decimated, and cities brought to their knees. The feeling of helplessness would be overwhelming as your treatments fail time and time again. You'd be forced to make impossible decisions, who to treat, who to abandon, knowing that your choices could mean life or death. Moreover, you'd face constant suspicion and hostility. Many believed that plague doctors spread the disease intentionally. In some towns, you might be met with violence or even accused of witchcraft. The very people you're trying to help could become your greatest threat. And let's not forget the isolation. As a plague doctor, you'd be shunned by society. No one would want to associate with you for fear of contracting the disease. Your meals would be solitary affairs, your nights lonely, and your social life non-existent. The psychological impact of such isolation, combined with the daily horrors you'd witness, would be enough to break even the strongest mind. Your pay, while potentially substantial, comes with a catch. Many plague doctors were essentially indentured servants, contracted by towns for a set period. Breaking your contract could result in steep fines or even imprisonment. So even if you wanted to quit, and you would want to quit probably within hours, you couldn't without facing severe consequences. As the day draws to a close, you return to your lodgings, often a separate house provided by the town to keep you isolated from the general population. As you remove your sweat-soaked, possibly contaminated costume, you'd be acutely aware of every itch, every cough, wondering if this is the day you've contracted the plague yourself. Sleep would be elusive, haunted by the faces of those you couldn't save, and the knowledge that tomorrow brings more of the same. The toll on your mental health would be severe, with no concept of therapy or counseling to help you cope with the trauma you experience daily. In the end, the life of a medieval plague doctor was one of constant fear, isolation, and futility. Your bizarre appearance, once perhaps a source of pride, would become a prison. Your attempts to heal would more often than not fail, leaving you feeling useless and demoralized. The psychological strain, the physical discomfort, and the ever-present threat of contracting the plague yourself would make each day a test of endurance that few could withstand. So the next time you see an image of a plague doctor and think it looks cool or mysterious, remember the reality behind the mask. It's a stark reminder of a time when medicine was more theater than science, and when facing a pandemic meant donning a bird-like mask and hoping for the best. In our modern world of advanced medical knowledge and protective equipment, we can be thankful that the era of the plague doctor is long behind us. As the first light of dawn creeps through the narrow streets of a medieval town, a peculiar figure emerges from the shadows. The plague doctor, with his distinctive beaked mask and long, dark robes, begins his daily routine in a world gripped by fear and disease. Our plague doctor, whom we'll call Dr. Corvus, rises early, long before most of the town's inhabitants stir from their slumber. His first task is to prepare himself for the day ahead, a process that is both intricate and time-consuming. Dr. Corvus starts by donning his protective gear. He slips into a waxed leather coat that reaches down to his ankles, believing it will shield him from the miasma, the foul air thought to spread the plague. Next, he pulls on thick leather gloves that extend up to his elbows. The most iconic part of his outfit is, of course, the mask. Dr. Corvus carefully places the beak-shaped mask over his face. The long beak is stuffed with aromatic herbs, spices, and straw. These pleasant scents are thought to purify the air he breathes and ward off the plague. Lavender, mint, camphor, and cinnamon are among the fragrant ingredients packed into the beak. While these do little to actually prevent the spread of disease, they do make the often unpleasant odors of his job more bearable. With his protective gear in place, Dr. Corvus gathers his tools. Into a large leather bag, he places vials of herbal remedies, leeches for bloodletting, and a long stick. This stick serves two purposes: to examine patients from a distance and to keep the uninfected at bay. Before leaving his lodgings, Dr. Corvus takes a moment to steel himself for the day ahead. He knows that he will face suffering, fear, and quite possibly death. Yet he believes his work is crucial in combating the plague that ravages the town. As he steps out into the quiet streets, the first thing Dr. Corvus does is make his way to the town's central square. Here, he meets with other plague doctors and town officials to discuss the latest developments and share information about new cases or deaths. This morning meeting is brief but somber. The plague shows no signs of abating, and new cases are reported daily. The town's resources are stretched thin, and fear is palpable among the populace. After the meeting, Dr. Corvus begins his rounds. His first stop is a small bakery where the owner has fallen ill. As he approaches, he can hear the labored breathing of the patient even before entering the building. Inside, he finds the baker lying on a makeshift bed, his skin pale and clammy. Dr. Corvus examines the man from a distance, using his stick to lift the blanket and inspect the telltale swellings or buboes that indicate the plague. The baker's wife watches anxiously as Dr. Corvus performs his examination. She asks, "Can you cure him, doctor?" Dr. Corvus replies with a noncommittal grunt. He knows that his treatments are largely ineffective, but he must maintain an air of authority and competence. Dr. Corvus begins his treatment by lighting a small fire in a brazier and adding aromatic herbs. The pungent smoke fills the room, which he believes will drive away the evil humors causing the illness. Next, he prepares a concoction of herbs and vinegar, instructing the baker's wife to help her husband drink it. The mixture is bitter and causes the baker to cough violently, but Dr. Corvus assures them this is a sign the medicine is working. As a final measure, Dr. Corvus performs a bloodletting. He carefully applies leeches to the baker's skin, explaining that this will help balance the body's humors and draw out the disease. The baker winces at the sensation, but is too weak to protest. With his treatments complete, Dr. Corvus gives instructions to the baker's wife on how to care for her husband. He emphasizes the importance of burning aromatic woods and herbs regularly and keeping the sick room clean. As he prepares to leave, Dr. Corvus notices the fearful glances of neighbors peering through windows. He knows that his presence in a household often marks it as a place to be avoided, further isolating those who are ill. Moving on to his next patient, Dr. Corvus walks through the narrow streets, his long robes brushing against the cobblestones. The town is beginning to wake up, but people give him a wide berth as he passes. His next stop is a wealthy merchant's home. Here he finds a different atmosphere. The house is spacious and well ventilated, with servants burning fragrant woods in every room. The merchant's daughter has fallen ill, and the family is desperate for help. Dr. Corvus examines the young woman, noting the fever and the painful swellings in her neck and armpits. He recommends a poultice of onions and herbs to draw out the poison, along with a tincture of rare and expensive herbs that the merchant can easily afford. As he works, Dr. Corvus overhears servants whispering about other households in the neighborhood that have been struck by the plague. He makes mental notes, knowing he will likely be called to these homes in the coming days. By mid-morning, Dr. Corvus has visited several more patients. The work is physically and emotionally draining. He has seen suffering in all its forms, from the poorest laborers to the wealthiest nobles. The plague, it seems, does not discriminate. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, Dr. Corvus makes his way to the town's hospital. Here, he will spend the rest of his morning tending to the most severe cases and consulting with other medical practitioners. The hospital is a grim place, filled with the moans of the sick and the acrid smell of death. Dr. Corvus moves from bed to bed, offering what comfort he can through his treatments and his presence. Despite the seemingly endless nature of his task, Dr. Corvus remains committed to his work. He believes that through careful observation and the application of his remedies, he might one day find a cure for the terrible plague that haunts the town. As the morning draws to a close, Dr. Corvus takes a moment to record his observations in a leather-bound journal. He notes the progression of symptoms in his patients, the effectiveness or lack thereof of his treatments, and any new developments in the spread of the disease. This record-keeping is crucial, not only for his own reference, but also to share with other plague doctors and town officials. It is through these detailed observations that they hope to gain a better understanding of the plague and how to combat it. With his morning duties complete, Dr. Corvus prepares for the afternoon ahead. He knows that more challenges await him, more patients to treat, more families to counsel, and more battles against the relentless plague. As he steps back out into the streets, the town is now fully awake. The fear that grips the populace is palpable, but so too is the resilience of those who continue to go about their daily lives in the shadow of the plague. Dr. Corvus adjusts his mask, takes a deep breath of the herb-scented air within, and sets off to face whatever the afternoon may bring. His morning duties may be over, but his fight against the plague continues unabated. As we delve deeper into the macabre world of medieval medicine, let's explore the bizarre and often horrifying treatments employed by plague doctors. These mysterious figures, with their iconic beaked masks, were at the forefront of battling the Black Death. However, their methods were far from what we'd consider effective today. One of the most common treatments prescribed by plague doctors was bloodletting. The theory behind this practice was rooted in the ancient belief of balancing the four humors of the body. The pestilence is caused by an imbalance of black bile. We must restore harmony by releasing the excess humors. Plague doctors would use leeches or make incisions in the patient's skin to drain blood. They believed this would purge the body of the disease, but in reality, it often weakened the already suffering patients, making them more susceptible to infection. Apply the leeches to the swollen lymph nodes. The creatures will draw out the corrupt blood and ease the patient's suffering. Another popular treatment was the use of herbal remedies and concoctions. Plague doctors would create potions using various ingredients, some of which were harmless, while others were downright dangerous. This tincture of herbs and spices will ward off the miasma. Drink it thrice daily and breathe deeply of its vapors. These mixtures often included herbs like sage, rosemary, and thyme, which were believed to have cleansing properties. However, some doctors also incorporated toxic substances like mercury or arsenic, thinking they would kill the disease but often poisoning the patient instead. For severe cases, we shall administer a paste of ground emeralds. The precious stone will surely drive out the pestilence. The use of aromatics was another common practice. Plague doctors believed that strong smells could purify the air and protect against the disease. This belief was partly responsible for the distinctive beak-like mask worn by plague doctors. Fill your mask with aromatic herbs and spices. The sweet smell will protect you from the foul air that carries the plague. The mask's beak was stuffed with strong-smelling substances like lavender, camphor, or even straw. While this didn't prevent the spread of the plague, it did offer some protection by creating a primitive form of air filtration. One of the more unusual treatments involved the use of animal excrement. Yes, you heard that correctly. Plague doctors would create poultices using animal dung, believing it had drawing properties that could extract the disease from the body. Apply this poultice of pigeon droppings to the buboes. It will draw out the evil humors and bring relief to the afflicted. Needless to say, this practice often led to further infection rather than healing. The lack of understanding about hygiene and the spread of disease meant that many treatments actually worsened the patient's condition. Some plague doctors advocated for more extreme measures, such as sitting in the sewers to expose oneself to the worst possible smells. The logic behind this was that it would somehow make one immune to the plague. For those brave enough, a fortnight spent in the city's sewers will strengthen your constitution against the pestilence. This, of course, only exposed people to more diseases and certainly didn't help in combating the plague. It's a stark reminder of how desperation and lack of scientific understanding can lead to dangerous practices. Another common treatment was the use of amulets and talismans. Plague doctors would often prescribe wearing certain objects or carrying specific items believed to ward off the disease. Wear this amulet of Saint Sebastian around your neck. Its holy power will shield you from the arrows of pestilence. While these items provided psychological comfort, they did nothing to prevent or cure the plague. However, in a time of such fear and uncertainty, even a placebo effect could be seen as valuable. Some plague doctors recommended more lifestyle-based treatments. They advised patients to maintain a balanced diet, get plenty of rest, and avoid excesses of any kind. While these recommendations were generally harmless and even beneficial, they were often combined with more dangerous practices. Eat a diet of bread and vegetables, abstain from meat and strong drink, and retire early each night. This regimen will keep your humors in balance and your body resistant to the plague. One of the more bizarre treatments involved the use of music therapy. Some plague doctors believed that music could harmonize the body's humors and drive away the disease. Listen to the soothing melodies of the lute for 1 hour each day. The harmonious tones will restore balance to your humors and strengthen your spirit against the plague. While music certainly couldn't cure the plague, it may have provided some emotional comfort to the sick and dying. In a time of such widespread suffering, even small comforts were valuable. It's important to note that not all plague doctors were actual physicians. Many were opportunists who saw a chance to profit from the widespread fear and desperation. This led to a wide variety of treatments, some based on medical knowledge of the time, others pure quackery. For a modest fee, I can provide you with this special elixir guaranteed to protect you from the plague. It contains the essence of unicorn horn and phoenix feathers. Of course, such miracle cures were nothing more than snake oil, taking advantage of people's fears and superstitions. The lack of regulation in medical practice during this time allowed for widespread exploitation. Despite the ineffectiveness and often harmful nature of these treatments, it's crucial to understand the context in which plague doctors operated. They were working with limited knowledge, facing an overwhelming and terrifying disease. We do what we must to combat this scourge. Though our methods may seem strange, they are all we have against the relentless tide of death. The plague doctors, with their strange practices and eerie appearance, have become iconic symbols of the Black Death. While their treatments were largely ineffective, they represent humanity's struggle against disease and our eternal quest to understand and overcome the challenges that nature presents. As we reflect on these medieval practices, we can appreciate how far medical science has come. The treatments that once seemed cutting edge are now recognized as dangerous and misguided. Yet the plague doctors of the past paved the way for the medical advancements we enjoy today, reminding us of the importance of scientific progress and evidence-based medicine. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets of a medieval town, we turn our attention to one of history's most enigmatic figures, the plague doctor. Let's explore the evening rituals of these mysterious healers during the time of the Black Death. As darkness falls, the plague doctor returns to his quarters after a long day of tending to the sick and dying. His distinctive beak-like mask and long, waxed leather coat are silhouetted against the dim light of flickering candles. First on the agenda is the meticulous process of removing the protective gear. The plague doctor carefully takes off his mask, a process that can take several minutes. The mask, with its glass eye openings and beak stuffed with aromatic herbs, is believed to purify the air he breathes. Next, he removes his heavy leather gloves, being cautious not to touch the exterior. These gloves, along with the waxed leather coat, are thought to provide a barrier against the miasma, or bad air, believed to spread the plague. The doctor then carefully removes his hat and coat, hanging them near the door. He believes these items must be aired out to dispel any lingering disease. With his outer garments removed, the plague doctor turns his attention to personal hygiene. He pours water from a pitcher into a basin and begins to wash his hands and face thoroughly. This ritual cleansing is not just for physical cleanliness, but also holds spiritual significance, as if washing away the day's encounters with death and disease. As he cleanses himself, the doctor may recite prayers or incantations, seeking divine protection against the plague. Despite their scientific approach, many plague doctors were deeply superstitious and religious. After washing, the doctor changes into clean, loose-fitting clothes made of linen. These garments are believed to be less likely to harbor the plague than the heavy, close-fitting clothes worn during the day. With his body clean and reclothed, the plague doctor turns his attention to his tools. He carefully lays out his medical instruments on a clean cloth, lancets for bloodletting, herbs for poultices, and vials of various concoctions. Using a mixture of vinegar and herbs, he meticulously cleans each instrument. This process serves both practical and superstitious purposes. While it does help prevent infection, the doctor also believes it purifies the tools of any lingering evil spirits or miasma. As he works, the plague doctor may consult his medical texts, updating his notes on the day's patients and treatments. These records are crucial for tracking the spread of the disease and the effectiveness of various remedies. Once his tools are clean, the doctor prepares for the next day. He refills his herb pouches with fresh aromatic plants like lavender, mint, and camphor. These herbs are stuffed into the beak of his mask, creating a fragrant barrier that he believes will protect him from the plague's miasma. Next, he prepares his medicines for the following day. This might include mixing herbal tinctures, grinding powders, or preparing poultices. Common ingredients include dried toads, arsenic, mercury, and various herbs believed to have healing properties. As the night grows later, the plague doctor turns his attention to his own health. He may drink a tonic of his own creation, often including ingredients like garlic, herbs, and strong alcohol, which he believes will fortify his body against the plague. Before retiring, the doctor often spends time in quiet contemplation or prayer. The constant exposure to death and suffering takes a toll on even the most hardened practitioners, and this moment of reflection helps him process the day's events. Finally, as he prepares for sleep, the plague doctor performs one last ritual. He places a sachet of herbs under his pillow, both for its pleasant aroma and its supposed protective qualities against nightmares and evil spirits. As he lays down to rest, the plague doctor knows that tomorrow will bring more challenges, more suffering, and more death. Yet he also holds on to hope that his efforts, however misguided they may seem to us now, might make a difference in the fight against the relentless plague. This nightly ritual, repeated in countless variations across medieval Europe, represents more than just a series of actions. It embodies the complex interplay of science, superstition, and survival that characterized medicine during the time of the Black Death. The plague doctor's evening routine serves as a poignant reminder of humanity's eternal struggle against disease and our constant search for understanding and control in the face of overwhelming uncertainty. As we reflect on these historical practices, we can appreciate how far medical science has come. Yet, we can also recognize the common thread of human resilience and the drive to heal that connects us across the centuries to these enigmatic figures of the past. So as you drift off to sleep, imagine the quiet rustle of a plague doctor's robes, the soft clink of glass vials, and the gentle aroma of herbs wafting through a medieval town. Let these soothing images of a time long past carry you into peaceful slumber. As we conclude our journey through the grim world of medieval plague doctors, we're left with a stark reminder of how far medical science has come. These mysterious figures, once seen as harbingers of both hope and doom, now serve as a testament to humanity's resilience in the face of overwhelming adversity. The plague doctor's iconic costume, while ineffective against the true causes of disease, represents an early attempt at protective medical gear. Today, we see echoes of this in the personal protective equipment used by modern healthcare workers battling contemporary pandemics. It's a sobering parallel that bridges centuries of medical progress. But beyond their attire, the legacy of plague doctors is complex. On one hand, their methods were often misguided, sometimes even harmful. The use of leeches, the practice of bloodletting, and the reliance on superstition over empirical observation all contributed to unnecessary suffering. Yet on the other hand, these individuals showed remarkable courage, willingly putting themselves in harm's way to aid the sick and dying. It's important to remember that many plague doctors were not trained physicians, but rather appointed officials or volunteers. They stepped into roles that others feared to take, facing near certain death with a mixture of duty, desperation, and perhaps a touch of morbid curiosity. Their experiences, documented in journals and reports, would later contribute to the advancement of medical knowledge and epidemiology. The plague doctor's approach to disease also highlights the cultural and social aspects of medicine throughout history. The belief in miasma theory, that bad air caused illness, shaped not only medical practices, but also urban planning and public health policies. While incorrect, this theory did lead to some beneficial outcomes, such as improved sanitation in cities. As we reflect on the era of plague doctors, we're reminded of the ongoing battle against infectious diseases. Today's medical professionals, armed with advanced technology and scientific understanding, face challenges that would have seemed insurmountable to their medieval counterparts. Yet the core mission remains the same: to heal the sick and protect the healthy. The image of the plague doctor serves as a powerful symbol of both the terrors of past pandemics and the human drive to overcome them. It reminds us of the importance of scientific progress, the value of compassion in healthcare, and the need for society to support those on the front lines of medical crises. In our modern world, where global pandemics can still arise and spread with frightening speed, the lessons from the age of plague doctors remain relevant. We must remain vigilant, adaptable, and committed to the pursuit of medical knowledge. At the same time, we must never forget the human element in healthcare, the courage, compassion, and sacrifice of those who dedicate their lives to healing others. As we close this chapter on medieval plague doctors, let's carry forward their spirit of dedication and their willingness to face the unknown. In doing so, we honor not only their memory, but also the countless healthcare workers throughout history who have stood between humanity and the specter of disease. As we conclude our exploration of Viking raids, let's shift our focus to another fascinating aspect of history. We'll now delve into the world of medieval castle sieges, where strategy and endurance were put to the ultimate test. These prolonged battles often lasted for months, testing the limits of both attackers and defenders alike. As we journey further back in time, we find ourselves in the heart of Mesoamerica, where one of the most fascinating and misunderstood civilizations once thrived. The Aztec Empire, with its grand cities, complex social structure, and fierce warriors, has captivated the imagination of historians and adventurers alike for centuries. But what was it really like to be an Aztec warrior? Let's delve into the world of these formidable fighters and discover why you probably wouldn't last a day in their sandals. First, let's set the scene. The year is 1519 and the Aztec Empire is at its zenith. The capital city of Tenochtitlan, built on an island in Lake Texcoco, is a marvel of engineering and urban planning. Its population of over 200,000 rivals that of the largest European cities at the time. The streets bustle with activity, marketplaces overflow with exotic goods, and towering pyramids reach towards the sky, their steps stained with the blood of sacrificial victims. In this world of splendor and brutality, the Aztec warrior holds a revered position, but becoming one is no easy feat. From a young age, male children are groomed for potential military service. At around 6 years old, boys begin their education at the Talpachkali, or House of Youth. Here, they learn the basics of warfare, religious rituals, and civic duties. As you can imagine, the training is rigorous and unforgiving. Physical conditioning starts early, with young boys expected to carry heavy loads, run long distances, and endure extreme temperatures. Failure to meet these demands often results in harsh punishments. Could you handle being woken before dawn every day to fetch water from a distant spring, carrying heavy clay pots on your back, or spending hours practicing with wooden weapons until your hands blister and bleed? But physical training is just the beginning. Aztec warriors are expected to be more than just brute force. They must master the art of strategy, learn to read and write using complex pictographs, and memorize lengthy poems and songs that recount the history and mythology of their people. Imagine trying to learn a new language and writing system while also being expected to recite epic poems from memory, all while nursing your wounds from combat training. As you progress through your training, the stakes get higher. By the time you reach your teenage years, you're expected to join raiding parties and prove your worth in actual combat. But here's the catch, you're not considered a true warrior until you've captured your first prisoner in battle. This isn't just about defeating an enemy. You need to take them alive, which is often more challenging and dangerous than simply killing them. Now let's talk about the gear you'd be using. Forget about steel swords and iron armor. As an Aztec warrior, your primary weapon would be the macuahuitl, a wooden club embedded with razor-sharp obsidian blades. While incredibly lethal, it requires immense skill to wield effectively. One wrong move, and you might injure yourself as badly as your enemy. Your armor, known as ikkahuipili, is made of quilted cotton. While surprisingly effective against the stone weapons of Mesoamerica, it offers little protection against bladed weapons. And forget about covering your whole body, most of your limbs would be exposed, making you vulnerable to injury and the searing heat of the tropical sun. Speaking of the climate, could you endure hours of intense combat in the sweltering heat and humidity of central Mexico? Dehydration and heat exhaustion would be constant threats, not to mention the risk of tropical diseases that your European immune system would be ill-equipped to handle. But perhaps the most challenging aspect of being an Aztec warrior isn't the physical demands or the constant threat of death in battle. It's the psychological toll of living in a society where human sacrifice is not just accepted, but celebrated. As a warrior, you'd be expected to participate in these rituals, both as a captor bringing in sacrificial victims and potentially as the sacrifice yourself if captured by enemy forces. The Aztec belief system viewed human sacrifice as a necessary act to keep the universe in balance. The gods had sacrificed themselves to create the world, and in return they required human blood to maintain it. This wasn't seen as cruel or barbaric by the Aztecs, but as a sacred duty. Could you reconcile this worldview with your own moral compass? Moreover, the pressure to succeed as a warrior would be immense. Your social status, your family's honor, and your very identity would all hinge on your performance in battle. Failure wasn't just a personal setback, it could mean disgrace for your entire lineage. And let's not forget about the political intrigue. The Aztec Empire was a complex web of alliances, rivalries, and power struggles. As a warrior, you'd be expected to navigate this landscape carefully. One wrong move, one misplaced loyalty, and you could find yourself on the wrong side of a purge or used as a convenient scapegoat for a failed military campaign. So as we paint this picture of life as an Aztec warrior, ask yourself, could you truly last even a single day in this world? Could you endure the physical hardships, master the complex skills, and adapt to a cultural mindset so alien to your own? For most of us, the answer is a resounding no. The life of an Aztec warrior was one of constant challenge, danger, and cultural practices that we today find difficult to comprehend. Yet it's crucial to remember that these warriors were products of their time and culture. They were not inherently more violent or barbaric than other societies of their era. Their world was shaped by deeply held religious beliefs, complex social structures, and a constant struggle for survival and dominance in a challenging environment. Understanding the life of an Aztec warrior gives us a window into a civilization that was both incredibly advanced and, to our modern sensibilities, shockingly brutal. It reminds us of the vast diversity of human experience throughout history and challenges us to view the past not through the lens of our own cultural norms, but with an open mind to the complex factors that shape societies. As we close this chapter on the Aztec warrior, we're left with a profound appreciation for the resilience and complexity of human societies. While we may not envy their lives, we can certainly learn from their dedication, skill, and the intricate culture they were part of. In our next segment, we'll explore another fascinating historical role that you probably wouldn't last a day in, continuing our journey through the lesser-known aspects of history that shaped our world. As we delve deeper into the world of ancient civilizations, let's turn our attention to the fierce and disciplined warriors of the Aztec Empire. The Aztecs, known for their complex society and impressive military might, placed immense importance on the training and development of their warriors. This rigorous process began at a young age and continued throughout a warrior's life. From the moment an Aztec boy was born, his path as a potential warrior was set. At birth, the midwife would place a small shield in one of his hands and miniature weapons in the other, a symbolic gesture of his future role in society. This early introduction to warfare was just the beginning of a lifelong journey dedicated to combat and honor. As children, young Aztec boys were educated in two primary institutions, the Tolpachcali, or House of Youth, for commoners, and the Comicac for nobles. While both provided military training, the Tolpachcali focused more intensively on warfare and combat skills. Here, boys as young as 5 would begin their education, learning about Aztec history, religion, and the basics of combat. The training in the Tolpachcali was grueling and all-encompassing. Young boys would start with simple tasks such as carrying supplies and running errands for older warriors. As they grew older, their training intensified. They learned to use weapons like the macuahurel, a wooden club embedded with obsidian blades, as well as spears, atlatls, spear throwers, and bows and arrows. Physical conditioning was a crucial aspect of Aztec warrior training. Young men would engage in strenuous exercises to build strength, endurance, and agility. They would run long distances, participate in mock battles, and carry heavy loads to develop their stamina. The Aztecs believed that a warrior's physical prowess was directly linked to his effectiveness in battle. One particularly challenging aspect of training involved fasting and bloodletting rituals. Warriors were expected to demonstrate their ability to endure pain and deprivation, often engaging in self-sacrifice by drawing blood from their earlobes, tongues, or other body parts as offerings to the gods. This practice was believed to not only please the deities, but also to toughen the warriors mentally and physically. As trainees progressed, they would learn more advanced combat techniques and strategies. This included formations, ambush tactics, and the art of hand-to-hand combat. The Aztecs placed great emphasis on capturing enemies alive for ritual sacrifice, so warriors had to be skilled in subduing opponents without killing them, a challenging feat in the heat of battle. An essential part of Aztec warrior training was the cultivation of mental fortitude. Warriors were taught to be fearless in the face of death, as dying in battle or being captured and sacrificed was considered a great honor. They were instilled with a sense of duty to their city-state and to the gods, believing that their actions in warfare directly impacted the cosmic balance of the universe. The training didn't stop once a young man became a full-fledged warrior. Throughout their careers, Aztec warriors continued to hone their skills and prove their worth on the battlefield. Success in combat was rewarded with promotions, special privileges, and the right to wear more elaborate costumes and wield more advanced weapons. One of the most prestigious warrior classes was the Eagle Warriors. These elite fighters underwent additional specialized training that pushed them to their absolute limits. They were known for their exceptional bravery and skill, often leading charges into battle and undertaking the most dangerous missions. Another elite class was the Jaguar warriors, who were equally formidable. Their training focused on stealth and agility, mimicking the movements of their namesake animal. Both eagle and jaguar warriors were highly respected and feared on the battlefield, their mere presence often enough to strike terror into the hearts of their enemies. The Aztec warriors' equipment was also a crucial part of their training. They learned to craft and maintain their own weapons and armor. This included weaving pili, a thick quilted cotton armor that was surprisingly effective against the obsidian-edged weapons of Mesoamerica. They also learned to create and decorate their shields, which often bore intricate designs representing their achievements and rank. As warriors progressed through the ranks, they would earn the right to wear more elaborate costumes. These weren't just for show. The colorful feathers, intricate headdresses, and animal skins served to intimidate enemies and showcase the warrior's status. Learning to fight effectively while wearing these sometimes cumbersome outfits was an important part of advanced training. The culmination of an Aztec warrior's training was participation in the Flower Wars. These ritualized conflicts between city-states were not about territorial gain, but rather to capture warriors for sacrifice and to demonstrate military prowess. Success in these wars could elevate a warrior's status significantly, potentially even allowing him to join the ranks of the elite. It's important to note that while Aztec warrior training was incredibly demanding, it wasn't just about creating efficient killers. The Aztec philosophy emphasized the balance between the physical and the spiritual. Warriors were expected to be well-versed in poetry, music, and philosophy. This holistic approach to education produced warriors who were not only formidable on the battlefield, but also cultured and articulate in peacetime. In conclusion, the life of an Aztec warrior was one of constant training, discipline, and dedication. From childhood to their final days, these individuals were shaped by a culture that valued martial prowess and spiritual devotion in equal measure. The rigorous training regimen they endured produced some of the most feared and respected warriors in Mesoamerican history, whose legacy continues to fascinate us to this day. As we journey back in time to the heart of the Aztec Empire, we find ourselves on the cusp of a monumental battle. The year is 1519, and the air is thick with tension as Aztec warriors prepare for an impending conflict. Let's delve into the rigorous and often brutal preparations these ancient warriors would undergo before facing their enemies. First and foremost, an Aztec warrior's day would begin long before dawn. The sound of conch shells would pierce the early morning stillness, signaling the start of their grueling routine. Awaken, warriors of the sun. The day of battle approaches, and we must ready ourselves for the glory of combat. As the warriors stirred from their sleep, they would immediately begin their physical training. This wasn't just a simple warm-up, it was an intense regimen designed to push their bodies to the limit. My muscles ache, but I must endure. For the honor of my people and the favor of the gods, narrator. The training would often include running long distances while carrying heavy loads, simulating the endurance needed for long marches to battle. They would also engage in mock combat, hunting their skills with various weapons. Faster, harder, your enemies will show no mercy, and neither will I. Your strength is the strength of our empire. But physical preparation was only part of the battle readiness. Aztec warriors also underwent intense spiritual and psychological preparation. They believed that their success in battle was directly tied to their devotion to the gods. Children of the sun, hear me. The gods watch us now. Your sacrifices, your pain, your dedication, all of it feeds their power, and in turn they will grant you strength in battle. Fasting was a common practice before battle. Warriors would abstain from certain foods and engage in ritual bloodletting, believing that this self-sacrifice would curry favor with their deities. I offer my blood freely, great Huitzilopochtli. May it nourish you and bring your blessing upon our weapons. The psychological preparation was equally intense. Aztec warriors were taught to embrace death, viewing it not as an end, but as a transition to a glorious afterlife. Fear not death, for it is the gateway to eternal glory. To die in battle is the highest honor, a direct path to paradise. As the day of battle drew nearer, the warriors would begin to don their battle attire. This was no simple task of putting on armor. Each piece of their outfit held deep symbolic meaning and was believed to offer both physical and spiritual protection. This jaguar skin will grant me the creature's ferocity. The feathers of the eagle will give me swiftness in battle. Each adornment makes me more than a man. I become a living weapon of the gods. The most elite warriors, known as the Eagle and Jaguar warriors, would wear elaborate costumes that transformed them into the very essence of these powerful animals. The psychological impact on both the wearer and their enemies was significant. In this garb, I am no longer just a man. I am the embodiment of the sky itself, descending upon our enemies with talons of justice. And I am the night, the shadow that stalks and devours our foes. Together, we are the wrath of nature unleashed. Weapons preparation was another crucial aspect of battle readiness. Aztec warriors wielded a variety of arms, each requiring specific care and ritual. Sharpen your macuahuitl with care, warrior. Each obsidian blade must be honed to perfection. It is not just a weapon, but an extension of your very being. The macuahuitl, a wooden club embedded with razor-sharp obsidian blades, was a fearsome weapon capable of inflicting devastating injuries. Warriors would spend hours ensuring each blade was perfectly set and sharpened. I can feel the thirst of the blades. They long for the blood of our enemies, just as I do. Atlatls or spear throwers were another crucial weapon. Warriors would practice for hours, perfecting their aim and power. Visualize your target, feel the weight of the spear, become one with it. When you release, it should feel as natural as breathing. As the day of battle approached, the entire Aztec army would engage in massive ritual ceremonies. These events were designed to unify the warriors and invoke the protection and favor of the gods. Great Huitzilopochtli, god of war and sun, we offer you this sacrifice that you may lend your strength to our arms and your fire to our hearts. Human sacrifice was a central part of Aztec religion, and pre-battle rituals often included the offering of captives to the gods. While this practice may seem brutal to modern sensibilities, for the Aztecs, it was a sacred and necessary act to ensure cosmic balance and divine favor. Watch my warriors, as the blood of our enemies feeds the earth, so too will it feed our courage. We fight not just for ourselves, but for the very order of the universe. The night before battle was often sleepless for many warriors. They would spend hours in prayer, meditation, and last-minute preparations. I cannot sleep, my mind races with thoughts of the coming battle. Will I bring honor to my family? Will the gods favor me? I must trust in my training, in my faith, and in the strength of my brothers in arms. As dawn broke on the day of battle, the Aztec army would assemble, a sea of colorful feathers, glinting obsidian, and fierce determination. The sound of drums and the haunting call of conch shells would fill the air, spurring the warriors to a fever pitch of excitement and terror. Warriors of the sun, the moment has come. Let your hearts be fierce, your arms be strong, and your spirits be unbreakable. For the glory of the empire, for the honor of your families, for the favor of the gods, we march to victory or to a glorious death. And so, with a thunderous roar, the Aztec warriors would charge into battle, each one a product of intense physical, mental, and spiritual preparation. Their rigorous training and deep-seated beliefs would carry them through the chaos of combat, leaving an indelible mark on the pages of history. As we delve deeper into the harsh realities of ancient warriors, let's turn our attention to the fearsome Aztec warriors. While Hollywood might have you believe that being an Aztec warrior was all about colorful headdresses and exotic weapons, the truth was far more grueling and less glamorous. Aztec warfare was a complex and ritualized affair, deeply rooted in religious beliefs and social structures. As an Aztec warrior, your entire life would revolve around combat and the constant threat of death. From a young age, you'd be indoctrinated into a militaristic society where your worth was measured by your prowess on the battlefield. Your training would begin as early as age 15 when you'd enter the Tolpachkali, or youth house. Here, you'd learn the basics of combat, weapon handling, and military discipline. The training was brutal and unforgiving, designed to weed out the weak and forge the strong into living weapons. One of the most challenging aspects of being an Aztec warrior was the expectation of capturing enemies alive. Unlike other warrior cultures that prioritized killing, Aztec warfare placed a premium on taking prisoners for ritual sacrifice. This meant engaging in close-quarters combat with the intent to subdue rather than kill, a task that required immense skill and courage. Your primary weapon would be the macuahuitl, a wooden club embedded with obsidian blades. While formidable, this weapon required great strength and precision to use effectively. A single misstep could result in injuring yourself as easily as your enemy. The Macuayudal was designed to inflict gruesome, slashing wounds, making it ideal for disabling opponents without killing them outright. In addition to the Macuayudal, you'd be expected to master the Atlatl, a spear thrower that could launch darts with incredible force and accuracy. This weapon demanded years of practice to use effectively in the chaos of battle. The Atlatl was particularly useful in the initial stages of combat, allowing you to engage enemies from a distance before closing in for hand-to-hand fighting. Your armor would consist of quilted cotton, known as Ikkahu Pili. While it provided some protection against the obsidian-edged weapons of your enemies, it was far from impenetrable. The tropical climate of Mesoamerica meant that wearing this armor was often an exercise in endurance, as the heat and humidity would quickly sap your strength. The Aztec military hierarchy was strict and meritocratic. You'd start as a young warrior with no distinguishing marks or titles. Only by capturing your first prisoner in battle would you earn the right to wear a simple loincloth and cape. Each subsequent capture would allow you to add more elaborate elements to your costume and advance in rank. The ultimate goal for any Aztec warrior was to join the elite ranks of the Eagle or Jaguar warriors. These prestigious orders were reserved for the most skilled and courageous fighters. To achieve this status, you need to capture multiple enemies and prove your worth in numerous battles. The path to becoming an Eagle or Jaguar warrior was long and perilous, with many aspiring warriors falling in battle before reaching this coveted position. One of the most daunting aspects of Aztec warfare was the concept of the Flower War or Xochitl. These were prearranged battles between the Aztecs and their neighbors, primarily for the purpose of capturing prisoners for sacrifice and training young warriors. As a participant in these conflicts, you'd be expected to fight with full intensity, knowing that your opponents were equally committed to capturing you. The psychological toll of constant warfare and the ever-present threat of capture cannot be overstated. Aztec warriors lived with the knowledge that being taken prisoner meant a gruesome death on the sacrificial altar. This created a culture of extreme bravery bordering on fatalism, where warriors would often fight to the death rather than face capture. Your diet as an Aztec warrior would be simple but nutritious, consisting mainly of maize, beans, and vegetables. Meat was a rarity, usually reserved for after successful battles or during religious festivals. You'd need to maintain peak physical condition through rigorous training and a disciplined lifestyle, as any weakness could prove fatal on the battlefield. The Aztec concept of warfare extended beyond mere physical combat. As a warrior, you'd be expected to embody the ideals of your society, displaying courage, self-sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty to your city-state and gods. Failure to live up to these expectations could result in severe punishment or social ostracism. One particularly challenging aspect of Aztec combat was the terrain. Many battles took place in the marshy areas around Tenochtitlan or on the narrow causeways leading to the city. Fighting in these conditions required exceptional balance and agility, as a single misstep could send you plunging into the water, weighed down by your weapons and armor. The Aztec military campaigns often involved long marches through difficult terrain. You'd be expected to cover great distances on foot, carrying your weapons and supplies. These journeys could last for weeks or even months, testing your endurance and resolve long before you ever engaged in actual combat. In the heat of battle, you need to be constantly aware of your surroundings. Aztec warfare was chaotic and fluid, with individual warriors often engaging in one-on-one combat amidst the larger melee. Your ability to read your opponent, anticipate their moves, and react swiftly could mean the difference between victory and defeat, life and death. As we conclude this segment on the realities of being an Aztec warrior, it's clear that this was a life of extreme dedication, constant danger, and unwavering commitment to a complex set of cultural and religious beliefs. The romanticized images of Aztec warriors we often see in popular culture barely scratch the surface of the harsh realities these ancient combatants faced on a daily basis. As we conclude our journey through the life of an ancient Aztec warrior, it's clear that their existence was far from the romanticized tales we often hear. The brutal reality of their daily lives and the constant pressure to prove themselves in battle would be overwhelming for most modern individuals. The Aztec warrior's life was a delicate balance between honor and horror. While they were revered in their society, the price they paid for that respect was steep. The constant threat of capture, sacrifice, or death in battle loomed over them like a shadow, never allowing a moment's peace. Consider the psychological toll of knowing that your primary purpose was to capture enemies for sacrifice. This wasn't just a job, it was a sacred duty, ingrained into every aspect of their culture and beliefs. The weight of this responsibility would be crushing for someone from our time, where the sanctity of human life is held in much higher regard. The physical demands alone would be enough to break most of us. The rigorous training from childhood, the strict dietary restrictions, and the expectation to maintain peak physical condition at all times would be a far cry from our more sedentary lifestyles. The discomfort of wearing heavy, ornate armor in the sweltering Mesoamerican heat would be unbearable for those accustomed to climate-controlled environments. Let's not forget the constant exposure to violence and death. While we may encounter violence in media or news, experiencing it firsthand on a regular basis would be traumatizing for most. The sight of human sacrifices, the sounds of battle, and the smell of blood would be inescapable realities for an Aztec warrior. The hierarchical nature of Aztec society meant that warriors were under immense pressure to climb the ranks. Failure to do so could result in shame, loss of status, or even punishment. This relentless drive for advancement would be exhausting for those used to more flexible career paths and work-life balance. Moreover, the lack of modern medical knowledge and treatment would make every wound, no matter how small, a potential death sentence. Infections, diseases, and injuries that we consider treatable today could easily end a warrior's life or career in the Aztec world. In conclusion, while the life of an ancient Aztec warrior may seem exciting or glamorous from a distance, the harsh realities of their existence would be nearly impossible for a modern person to endure. The combination of physical hardships, psychological pressures, and cultural expectations creates a way of life that is fundamentally alien to our contemporary sensibilities. As we drift off to sleep, let's appreciate the comforts and freedoms of our modern lives, knowing that the challenges we face pale in comparison to those of the ancient Aztec warriors. Their legacy serves as a reminder of how far human civilization has come and how different our values and expectations are today. As we leave behind the treacherous world of Viking raiders, let's sail our longship through time to explore another fascinating historical topic. Our next destination takes us to a different era, where power, intrigue, and opulence reign supreme. Prepare to step into the lavish and dangerous world of the French royal court during the reign of Louis XIV, the Sun King. As we delve deeper into the annals of history, we find ourselves face to face with one of the most enigmatic figures of the medieval period, the Alchemist. In the dimly lit laboratories of the Middle Ages, these mysterious practitioners sought to unlock the secrets of the universe through a blend of science, magic, and philosophy. Imagine, if you will, a world where the line between science and sorcery was blurred, where the pursuit of knowledge often walked hand in hand with the quest for mystical power. This was the realm of the medieval alchemist, a figure both revered and feared, respected and mise. Picture yourself in a bustling medieval town, its narrow cobblestone streets winding between half-timbered houses. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke and the earthy aroma of herbs. In a secluded corner, tucked away from prying eyes, stands a modest workshop. This is where our story begins. As we approach the heavy wooden door, we can hear the soft bubbling of liquids and the occasional clink of glass. A faint, acrid smell seeps through the cracks, hinting at the arcane experiments taking place within. This is the domain of the alchemist, a sanctuary of knowledge and experimentation in a world often shrouded in superstition and ignorance. But who exactly were these alchemists? Far from the caricatures of wizened old men hunched over bubbling cauldrons that often come to mind, medieval alchemists were in many ways the predecessors of modern chemists and pharmacists. They were seekers of knowledge, driven by an insatiable curiosity about the natural world and a desire to understand its fundamental principles. At its core, alchemy was a philosophical and proto-scientific tradition that sought to purify, mature, and perfect certain objects. The goals were varied and often ambitious, transforming base metals into gold, creating an elixir of life that could cure all diseases and grant immortality, and discovering the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance believed to be the key to unlocking these transformations. But alchemy was more than just a quest for material wealth or eternal life. It was a holistic worldview that saw the universe as a living, interconnected system. Alchemists believed that by understanding and manipulating the basic elements of nature, they could unlock profound truths about the cosmos and humanity's place within it. The origins of alchemy can be traced back to ancient civilizations, with roots in Egyptian metallurgy, Greek philosophy, and Chinese Taoism. but it was during the Middle Ages in Europe that alchemy truly flourished, reaching its zenith between the 12th and 17th centuries. In medieval Europe, alchemy found patronage among the nobility and even royalty. Kings and princes, ever in need of gold to fund their wars and lavish lifestyles, were particularly interested in the alchemist's promise of transmuting base metals into precious ones. This royal interest provided both protection and resources for alchemists, allowing their craft to develop and spread. However, the life of an alchemist was not without its perils. The church viewed alchemy with suspicion, often associating it with heresy and dark magic. Alchemists had to tread carefully, balancing their pursuit of knowledge with the need to avoid accusations of witchcraft or dealings with the devil. This tension between scientific inquiry and religious doctrine was a defining feature of the medieval alchemist's existence. Many alchemists were devout Christians who saw their work as a way to understand and glorify God's creation. They often couched their writings in religious allegory and symbolism, both as a means of expressing their beliefs and as a way to protect themselves from persecution. The language of alchemy was deliberately obscure, filled with symbols and coded terminology. This served multiple purposes. It protected trade secrets, shielded practitioners from accusations of heresy, and reflected the belief that true knowledge should be accessible only to the initiated. Deciphering an alchemical text was a challenge in itself, requiring not just scientific knowledge but also a grasp of mythology, astrology, and religious symbolism. The alchemist's laboratory was a place of wonder and mystery. Filled with an array of peculiar instruments, it was a testament to the ingenuity and creativity of these early experimenters. Glass retorts, alembics for distillation, furnaces, and crucibles were among the tools of the trade. Each had its specific purpose in the complex processes of heating, cooling, distilling, and combining various substances. One of the most iconic symbols of alchemy was the athanor, a self-feeding furnace designed to maintain a constant temperature. This device was crucial for the long, slow processes that alchemists believed were necessary for transmutation. The athanor was often described in mystical terms, likened to the human body or the earth itself, reflecting the alchemical belief in the correspondence between microcosm and macrocosm. The materials used by alchemists were equally diverse and often exotic. Mercury, sulfur, and salt were considered the tria prima, or three primes, fundamental to all matter. But an alchemist's cabinet might also contain a bewildering array of substances: metals like gold, silver, and lead, minerals such as cinnabar and antimony, plants and animal products, and even more unusual ingredients like dragon's blood, actually a plant resin, or unicorn horn, often narwhal tusks. The work of an alchemist was painstaking and often dangerous. Many of the substances they worked with were toxic, and accidents were not uncommon. Burns, poisonings, and explosions were occupational hazards, yet these risks did little to deter the truly dedicated, who saw their work as a noble quest for higher knowledge. Despite its mystical trappings, alchemy made significant contributions to the development of science. Alchemists invented or improved many of the basic tools of modern chemistry. They developed techniques for purification, distillation, and the extraction of minerals. Their experiments led to the discovery of phosphorus, the mineral acids, and various metal alloys. Moreover, the alchemical worldview, with its emphasis on experimentation and the search for underlying principles, laid important groundwork for the scientific revolution that would follow. The idea that nature could be understood through careful observation and manipulation was a radical one in medieval Europe, and it was the alchemists who helped pave the way for this new way of thinking. As we stand here on the threshold of the alchemist's workshop, we're not just peering into a curiosity of history. We're witnessing the birth pangs of modern science, the struggle of human intellect to understand and master the natural world. The legacy of these medieval seekers lives on in our laboratories, our scientific methods, and our continuing quest to unravel the mysteries of the universe. In our next segment, we'll step through that heavy wooden door and immerse ourselves in the daily life of a medieval alchemist. We'll explore their practices, their beliefs, and the fascinating experiments that occupied their days and nights. So stay with us as we continue our journey into the captivating world of medieval alchemy. As we delve deeper into the monotonous life of a medieval alchemist, we find ourselves in their dimly lit laboratory. The air is thick with the acrid smell of various chemicals and the smoke from bubbling concoctions. Our alchemist, let's call him Albertus, begins his day by meticulously organizing his workspace. He arranges an array of glass vials, each filled with mysterious powders and liquids of varying colors. Albertus starts his first experiment of the day. He carefully measures out a precise amount of sulfur, his movements slow and deliberate to avoid any errors. The process of weighing ingredients is painstakingly slow. Albertus uses a set of scales, placing small metal weights on one side and adjusting the amount of sulfur on the other until they balance perfectly. Next, he grinds the sulfur in a mortar and pestle. The repetitive motion of crushing and grinding continues for what seems like an eternity. The fine yellow powder gradually accumulates at the bottom of the mortar. Albertus then moves on to prepare his furnace. He carefully arranges pieces of charcoal, ensuring proper airflow. The process of lighting the furnace is time-consuming, as he uses flint and steel to create sparks, slowly nurturing a small flame into a steady fire. While waiting for the furnace to reach the desired temperature, Albertus turns his attention to his alchemical texts. He pores over dense Latin manuscripts, filled with cryptic symbols and allegories. The alchemist's eyes strain in the dim light as he attempts to decipher the hidden meanings within the text. Hours pass as he cross-references different manuscripts, making meticulous notes in the margins. Finally, with the furnace at the right temperature, Albertus begins the process of distillation. He carefully pours a mixture of vinegar and herbs into a large glass retort. The retort is then placed over the furnace, its long neck extending into a collection flask. Albertus watches intently as droplets of liquid slowly form and trickle down into the flask. This process continues at an agonizingly slow pace. Albertus must maintain a constant vigil, adjusting the heat of the furnace and ensuring the apparatus remains intact. Hours pass and the collection flask gradually fills with a clear liquid. Albertus believes this distilled essence might hold the key to transmuting base metals into gold, or perhaps creating an elixir of life. As the distillation nears completion, Albertus prepares for the next stage of his experiment. He carefully measures out small amounts of various metals, copper, iron, and lead. Each metal is ground into a fine powder using the mortar and pestle. The repetitive grinding motion continues for what feels like an eternity, the sound of stone against metal creating a monotonous rhythm. With the metal powders prepared, Albertus begins to combine them with his distilled essence. He adds them one at a time, stirring the mixture with a glass rod. The alchemist observes the reaction closely, noting any changes in color or consistency. He records his observations in a leather-bound journal, his quill scratching against the parchment. As the day wears on, Albertus repeats this process multiple times, each with slight variations in the quantities or types of metals used. The repetitive nature of the work is mind-numbing, yet he persists. Between experiments, Albertus takes time to clean his equipment thoroughly. He meticulously washes each glass vessel, ensuring no residue remains that could contaminate future experiments. The cleaning process is tedious and time-consuming. Albertus uses a mixture of sand and vinegar to scrub the glassware, his hands becoming raw from the constant friction. As evening approaches, Albertus begins to wrap up his day's work. He carefully stores away his ingredients, securing volatile substances in locked cabinets. The alchemist then spends time organizing his notes, comparing the day's results with previous experiments. He searches for patterns or insights that might lead him closer to his ultimate goal. Despite the lack of significant breakthroughs, Albertus remains undeterred. He knows that the path to alchemical enlightenment is long and arduous, requiring patience and persistence. As he prepares to leave his laboratory for the night, Albertus takes one last look at his furnace, ensuring it's properly extinguished. He then secures the door, keeping his work hidden from prying eyes. And so ends another day in the life of a medieval alchemist. A day filled with repetitive tasks, careful measurements, and hours of patient observation. Tomorrow, Albertus will return to his laboratory, ready to continue his endless quest for alchemical knowledge. As we delve deeper into the annals of history, we encounter a profession that blurred the lines between science, magic, and danger, the medieval alchemist. These enigmatic figures, shrouded in mystery and often viewed with suspicion, dedicated their lives to the pursuit of transmutation and the elusive philosopher's stone. But their daily existence was far from the romanticized image we might hold today. Imagine waking up in a dimly lit, cluttered workshop, the air thick with acrid fumes and the pungent odor of various chemicals. As an alchemist in medieval times, your day would begin with a sense of both excitement and trepidation. The excitement stems from the possibility of groundbreaking discoveries, while the trepidation comes from the very real dangers that lurk in every corner of your laboratory. Your first task of the day would be to stoke the fires beneath your alchemical furnaces, known as athanors. These brick ovens, designed to maintain constant heat for extended periods, were the heart of your operations. As you carefully tend to the flames, you're acutely aware that a moment's inattention could lead to an uncontrolled fire, potentially destroying your life's work and endangering your entire neighborhood. With the fires burning steadily, you turn your attention to your experiments. Your workbench is a chaotic array of glass vessels, ceramic alembics, and metal crucibles. Each container holds substances of varying degrees of toxicity and volatility. You reach for a vial of mercury, a substance revered in alchemical circles for its unique properties. As you carefully pour the silvery liquid into a heated crucible, you're reminded of its deadly nature. Prolonged exposure to mercury vapors can lead to severe neurological damage, madness, and death. But mercury is just one of many hazardous materials at your disposal. Your shelves are lined with jars containing arsenic, lead, and sulfur. Each of these substances plays a crucial role in your experiments, but they also pose grave risks to your health. The concept of protective equipment is rudimentary at best in your time. You might wear thick leather gloves or cover your mouth and nose with a cloth, but these offer little real protection against the toxic fumes and corrosive liquids you handle daily. As the morning wears on, you begin a complex distillation process. You're attempting to create what you believe might be a step towards the elixir of life. The apparatus before you is a delicate arrangement of glass tubes and flasks, each connection sealed with a mixture of clay and egg whites. As the mixture in the main flask begins to boil, you watch intently for the color changes that might indicate success. Suddenly, a loud crack echoes through the workshop. One of the glass tubes has shattered under the pressure, sending shards flying and releasing a cloud of noxious vapor. You stumble back, coughing and wheezing, your eyes stinging from the acrid fumes. This is a stark reminder of the constant danger you face. Many alchemists before you have lost their eyesight, suffered severe burns, or succumbed to poisoning from similar accidents. After clearing the air and cleaning up the mess, you return to your work undeterred. The pursuit of knowledge and the dream of unlocking nature's secrets drive you forward despite the risks. You spend hours poring over ancient texts, deciphering cryptic symbols and allegories that might hold the key to your next breakthrough. The language of alchemy is intentionally obscure, a protective measure against persecution from religious authorities who often view your work as heretical. As the day progresses, you find yourself engaged in a particularly dangerous experiment. You're attempting to create aqua regia, a powerful acid capable of dissolving gold. The process involves combining nitric acid and hydrochloric acid, both highly corrosive substances. One wrong move, one drop spilled on your skin, and you could suffer severe, potentially fatal burns. With steady hands and bated breath, you carefully mix the acids. The resulting liquid, a yellow-orange solution, bubbles ominously in its container. You've successfully created one of the most potent substances known to alchemists, but at what cost? The fumes alone are enough to make your eyes water and your lungs burn. You quickly seal the container, knowing that prolonged exposure could lead to serious respiratory issues. As evening approaches, you're exhausted but exhilarated. Your day has been filled with near misses and small triumphs. You push the boundaries of known science, all while dancing on the edge of disaster. But your work is far from over. The life of an alchemist is one of constant vigilance and dedication. Before you can rest, you must secure your workshop. Many of the substances you work with are not only dangerous but also valuable. Thieves and rival alchemists would love to get their hands on your materials and notes. You carefully lock away your most precious ingredients and hide your journals in a secret compartment. The paranoia that comes with your profession is a constant companion. As you finally prepare for sleep, your mind races with new ideas and theories. The day's experiments have opened up new avenues of inquiry, and you're eager to explore them. But you're also acutely aware of the toll your work takes on your body. Your hands are stained and calloused, your lungs ache from the constant exposure to fumes, and you can't shake the metallic taste in your mouth that speaks of low-level poisoning. You drift off to sleep, knowing that tomorrow will bring new challenges and dangers. The life of a medieval alchemist is not for the faint of heart. It's a constant battle against the elements, against the limitations of your time, and often against your own body. But for you, the pursuit of the philosopher's stone, the elixir of life, and the secrets of transmutation make it all worthwhile. As we leave our alchemist to his restless slumber, we're reminded of the incredible risks taken by those who pushed the boundaries of knowledge in ages past. Their dangerous experiments, while often misguided by modern standards, laid the groundwork for the scientific method and many of the chemical processes we rely on today. The next time you benefit from modern chemistry or medicine, spare a thought for those early pioneers who risked life and limb in smoky, perilous workshops, all in the name of unlocking the secrets of the universe. As we delve deeper into the treacherous waters of medieval professions, let's turn our attention to a figure shrouded in mystery and often misunderstood, the alchemist. While the pursuit of turning base metals into gold might sound alluring, the life of a medieval alchemist was far from glamorous. In fact, it was fraught with danger, persecution, and constant fear. Imagine yourself as an alchemist in the heart of medieval Europe. Your days are spent hunched over bubbling concoctions, surrounded by arcane symbols and cryptic texts. But your greatest challenge isn't deciphering ancient formulas or mastering the art of transmutation. No, it's simply staying alive in a world that views your work with suspicion and hostility. The church, the most powerful institution of the time, regarded alchemy with deep mistrust. Your pursuit of knowledge and manipulation of natural elements treaded dangerously close to what they considered playing God. The line between alchemy and witchcraft was thin in the eyes of religious authorities, and crossing it could mean a swift and terrible end. As an alchemist, you need to constantly look over your shoulder, never knowing when accusations of heresy or dark magic might come your way. Your neighbors, once friendly, now eye you with suspicion. Whispers follow you through the streets, and you can feel the weight of their stares as you hurry back to your laboratory. But it's not just the church you need to worry about. Secular authorities are equally wary of your activities. Kings and nobles, always hungry for power and wealth, view your supposed ability to create gold as a threat to their economic control. They might demand you produce gold for them, an impossible task that could lead to your imprisonment or execution when you inevitably fail. Your workspace, a cluttered laboratory filled with strange apparatus and pungent odors, would be a constant source of anxiety. Every knock at the door could be the town guard coming to arrest you. Every distant shout in the street might be the start of a mob, whipped into a frenzy by rumors of your dark arts. The tools of your trade, innocent as they may seem to you, could be your downfall. That mortar and pestle used for grinding herbs. In the eyes of an accuser, it's clearly for preparing poisonous concoctions. The alembic you use for distillation, obviously a device for communing with evil spirits. Even your books, filled with alchemical symbols and diagrams, could be seen as proof of your dealings with the devil. Speaking of books, keeping records of your work would be a dangerous necessity. You need to develop a complex system of codes and symbols to obscure your writings from prying eyes. But this very act of secrecy could be used against you if discovered. After all, what innocent man needs to hide his work so thoroughly? The constant fear and paranoia would take a toll on your mental health. You'd find yourself second-guessing every interaction, wondering if that friendly conversation with a neighbor was genuine or if they were fishing for information to report to the authorities. Trust would become a luxury you couldn't afford. Your personal life, if you managed to have one at all, would be equally fraught. Marriage might be out of the question. Who would want to tie themselves to someone living under such suspicion? And children, the thought of bringing innocence into your precarious existence would be almost unthinkable. Even if you managed to avoid outright persecution, your social standing would be constantly in jeopardy. Respectable members of society would shun you, fearful of being associated with your questionable practices. You'd likely find yourself pushed to the fringes of society, living in the poorest parts of town among other outcasts and misfits. The irony of your situation wouldn't be lost on you. Your pursuit of knowledge, your attempts to understand and manipulate the natural world, noble goals in your eyes, have made you a pariah. The very society that could benefit from your discoveries rejects you out of fear and ignorance. And let's not forget the practical challenges of your work. Many of the substances you'd work with are highly toxic. Mercury, sulfur, arsenic, these were common ingredients in alchemical experiments. Without modern safety equipment or a full understanding of their dangers, you'd be constantly exposing yourself to potentially lethal substances. The physical toll of your work would be evident. Your hands, stained and scarred from countless experiments, would mark you as clearly as any brand. Chronic health issues from exposure to toxic fumes and substances would plague you. Respiratory problems, tremors, and deteriorating eyesight would be constant reminders of the price you pay for your passion. In the end, the life of a medieval alchemist was a lonely, dangerous, and often short one. Your pursuit of knowledge and understanding would come at a tremendous cost. The constant fear of persecution, the social isolation, the physical dangers of your work, all of these would wear you down day by day. So the next time you find yourself romanticizing the mysterious life of an alchemist, remember the reality. The pursuit of turning lead into gold might sound exciting, but in medieval times, it was more likely to turn your life into a nightmare of suspicion, fear, and isolation. Perhaps it's better to leave the transmutation to the pages of fantasy and appreciate the relative safety and acceptance of scientific pursuits in our modern world. As we conclude our journey through the life of a medieval alchemist, it's clear that their pursuit of knowledge was fraught with danger and uncertainty. The constant threat of persecution loomed over their heads, making every experiment a potential risk to their lives. Despite the perilous nature of their work, alchemists continued to push the boundaries of science and philosophy. Their contributions, though often misunderstood in their time, laid the groundwork for modern chemistry and scientific inquiry. The Alchemist's laboratory, a place of mystery and wonder, was filled with an array of unusual equipment. Retorts, alembics, and crucibles lined the shelves, each serving a specific purpose in the quest to transmute base metals into gold or discover the elixir of life. The pursuit of the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance believed to grant immortality and turn base metals into gold, consumed many alchemists' lives. This elusive goal drove them to experiment with dangerous substances and concoct bizarre potions, often at great personal risk. Alchemists faced not only physical dangers but also societal pressures. The church viewed their work with suspicion, often accusing them of heresy or consorting with dark forces. This forced many to work in secrecy, further isolating them from the rest of society. The language of alchemy was deliberately obscure, filled with symbols and cryptic terminology. This served two purposes: to protect their knowledge from the uninitiated and to shield themselves from accusations of witchcraft or heresy. Despite the risks, some alchemists found patronage among the nobility and royalty. Kings and queens, driven by the allure of unlimited wealth and eternal life, would sometimes sponsor alchemists in their courts. However, failure to produce results often led to swift and severe punishment. As we reflect on the life of a medieval alchemist, we can appreciate the courage and dedication it took to pursue knowledge in an age of superstition and fear. Their work, though often misguided by modern standards, was driven by a genuine desire to understand and manipulate the natural world. In many ways, the struggles of the alchemist mirror our own pursuit of knowledge today. While we may not face the same dangers, the drive to uncover the secrets of the universe remains a fundamental part of human nature. As you drift off to sleep, imagine the flickering candlelight in an alchemist's workshop, the bubbling of strange concoctions, and the rustle of ancient tomes. Though their world may seem far removed from our own, their legacy lives on in the scientific method and our continued quest for understanding. As we drift through the annals of history, our journey takes an unexpected turn. We leave behind the harsh realities of Viking life and set sail for new shores of knowledge. Our next destination promises equally intriguing tales of the past, where we'll explore another fascinating aspect of human history that might just lull you into a peaceful slumber. As we continue our journey through history's most challenging professions, we now turn our attention to a role that was both revered and feared in ancient Egyptian society, the embalmer. This crucial occupation played a pivotal role in the elaborate funerary practices of one of the world's most enduring civilizations. Picture yourself in the scorching heat of ancient Egypt, surrounded by the grandeur of towering pyramids and ornate temples. The air is thick with the scent of incense and exotic spices, but beneath this veneer of opulence lies a darker, more somber world, the realm of the embalmers. These skilled practitioners were tasked with preparing the dead for their journey into the afterlife, a process that was as complex as it was gruesome. Their work was considered sacred, yet it came with a heavy burden, both physical and spiritual. Let's delve into why you, a person of the modern world, would struggle to last even a day as an ancient Egyptian embalmer. The challenges you'd face would test not only your stomach, but also your mental fortitude and spiritual resilience. First and foremost, let's address the elephant in the room, the smell. As an embalmer, you'd be working with corpses in various states of decomposition. The stench of death would be your constant companion, permeating your clothes, your skin, and even your dreams. Character 1, the odor was overwhelming. It clung to everything, my robes, my hair, my very essence. Even after thorough cleansing rituals, I could never truly rid myself of that unmistakable scent of mortality. This olfactory assault would be just the beginning of your trials. The visual aspects of the job would be equally challenging. You'd be faced with the raw reality of death in all its forms, from the peaceful repose of natural causes to the grotesque aftermath of violence or disease. Your days would begin early, often before the scorching Egyptian sun had risen. You'd make your way to the embalming workshop, a place shunned by most of society despite its vital role. Here, in dimly lit chambers, you'd carry out your sacred duties. The embalming process itself was a lengthy and intricate affair, typically lasting around 70 days. Your first task would be to remove the internal organs of the deceased, a procedure that required both skill and a strong constitution. Character 2, the initial incision, was always the most daunting. We used a sharp obsidian blade to open the left side of the abdomen. The moment the flesh parted, revealing the inner workings of the human body, was a test of one's resolve. You carefully extract the liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines, each to be preserved separately in canopic jars. The heart, believed to be the seat of intelligence and emotion, would be left in place. The brain, however, received special treatment. Using a long, hooked instrument, you need to carefully remove the brain through the nostrils. This delicate procedure required a steady hand and nerves of steel. One wrong move could damage the facial features, compromising the deceased's journey to the afterlife. Character 3, extracting the brain, was an art form in itself. We'd insert the hook through the nasal cavity, slowly breaking apart and removing the organ piece by piece. It was a painstaking process that could take hours. With the organs removed, you then wash the body cavity with palm wine and fill it with a mixture of spices and natron, a naturally occurring salt used for desiccation. This crucial step prevented decay and preserved the body's form. The next phase of your work would involve dehydrating the body. You'd cover the corpse with natron and leave it to dry for approximately 40 days. During this time, you need to regularly check on the body, ensuring the desiccation process was progressing correctly. Character 1, the waiting was often the hardest part. We'd return day after day, watching as the body slowly shriveled and darkened. It was a constant reminder of our own mortality. Once the body was sufficiently dehydrated, you'd begin the restoration process. This involved carefully removing the natron, cleaning the body, and applying oils to restore some flexibility to the skin. You'd then stuff the body with linen or sawdust to give it a more lifelike appearance. The final step would be wrapping the body in layers of linen bandages, a process that could take up to 2 weeks. As you worked, you'd need to recite specific prayers and incantations, ensuring the deceased's spiritual protection. Character 2, each layer of bandage was accompanied by sacred words. We weren't just preserving a body, we were safeguarding a soul for its eternal journey. Beyond the physical challenges of the job, you'd also face significant social and spiritual burdens. Despite the importance of your work, you'd be viewed with a mixture of respect and fear by the general population. Many would avoid contact with you, believing that proximity to death was spiritually contaminating. Your role would also come with strict religious obligations. You'd need to maintain a high level of ritual purity, adhering to specific dietary restrictions and purification rituals. Any lapse in these practices could jeopardize not only your own spiritual well-being, but also that of the deceased in your care. Character 3, we walked a fine line between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. Our actions could determine the fate of a soul in the afterlife. It was a responsibility that weighed heavily on us. The psychological toll of your work would be immense. Constantly surrounded by death, you'd be forced to confront your own mortality on a daily basis. The grief of bereaved families would become a familiar burden, as would the pressure of ensuring each mummification was performed flawlessly. Moreover, you need to keep many of the details of your work secret. The exact methods of embalming were closely guarded, passed down from master to apprentice. This secrecy would further isolate you from society, creating a sense of otherness that few could understand. Character 1, we carried the weight of our knowledge in silence. The mysteries of life and death were ours to bear, but never to share fully with the outside world. In conclusion, while the role of an ancient Egyptian embalmer was undoubtedly crucial to their society, it was far from an easy or desirable occupation by modern standards. The combination of gruesome physical tasks, strict spiritual obligations, social isolation, and psychological strain would make it nearly impossible for a person of our time to endure even a single day in this profession. As we reflect on the challenges faced by these ancient practitioners, we gain a newfound appreciation for the dedication and resilience required to perform such a vital yet daunting role. Their work has allowed us to peer into the past, providing invaluable insights into one of history's most fascinating civilizations. As the sun begins to rise over the ancient city of Thebes, casting long shadows across the sacred temples and grand monuments, we turn our attention to a profession that was both revered and feared in ancient Egyptian society, the embalmer. Let's explore what a typical morning might have looked like for these skilled practitioners of mummification. The day of an ancient Egyptian embalmer begins early, well before the scorching heat of Ra's midday journey across the sky. Our embalmer, whom we'll call Neku, rises from his simple bed in a modest dwelling near the western bank of the Nile. The proximity to the realm of the dead is no coincidence, as Neku's work is intimately tied to the transition between life and the afterlife. Neku's first task of the day is to purify himself. This isn't just a matter of personal hygiene, it's a sacred ritual that prepares him for the holy work ahead. He approaches a stone basin filled with cool, clear water from the Nile. O happy God of the great river, cleanse my body and soul that I may serve the dead with purity. Neku splashes the water over his face and arms, feeling the grit of yesterday's work wash away. He then reaches for a small jar of natron, a naturally occurring salt mixture, and scrubs his hands and arms thoroughly. This substance, so crucial in the preservation of the dead, also serves to purify the living. With his body cleansed, Neku dons his simple white linen garments. The fabric is light and breathable, essential for the long hours he'll spend in the sweltering embalming workshop. He fastens a protective amulet around his neck, invoking the protection of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of mummification. Great Anubis, guide my hands in the sacred art of preservation. May my work honor the dead and ensure their safe passage to the afterlife. As Neku steps out of his home, the streets of Thebes are already coming to life. Bakers are pulling fresh bread from their ovens, merchants are setting up their stalls in the marketplace, and laborers are making their way to the grand construction projects that dot the city. But Neku's path takes him away from the bustle of daily life towards the quiet solemnity of the embalming workshops. The workshop is located in a secluded area, away from the eyes of the general public. As Neku approaches, he nods respectfully to the guards who stand watch day and night. The Egyptians take the sanctity of death very seriously, and the embalming process is shrouded in secrecy and religious significance. Inside the workshop, Neku's apprentices are already preparing for the day's work. They've laid out the tools of the trade: bronze hooks and scrapers for removing organs, jars of precious oils and resins, rolls of linen bandages, and of course more natron. The air is thick with the scent of incense, used both to mask less pleasant odors and to purify the space. Good morning, my students. Have you prepared the natron bath for our newest arrival? Yes, Master Neku. The body arrived late last night, and we've already begun the initial dehydration process. Neku nods approvingly. The first step in mummification is crucial. The body must be thoroughly dried to prevent decay. This process alone takes about 40 days, during which the body is covered in natron to draw out all moisture. Before approaching the body, Neku and his apprentices gather around a small shrine dedicated to Anubis. They light fresh incense and offer a prayer for guidance and protection in their sacred work. O Anubis, Wepwat, Osiris, and all gods who watch over the dead, bless our hands and hearts as we prepare this soul for the journey to the afterlife. May our work be pleasing in your sight. With the morning rituals complete, Neku turns his attention to the day's tasks. There's a body midway through the mummification process that needs attention, and a completed mummy that must be wrapped in its final layers of linen before being returned to the family for burial. Neku begins by checking on the body in the natron bath. He carefully inspects the desiccation process, ensuring that the natron is doing its job effectively. The sight and smell would be overwhelming to most, but for Neku, it's simply part of his daily routine. To his apprentice, the desiccation is progressing well. In a few more days, we'll be ready to remove the internal organs. Master, I've been wondering, why do we remove the internal organs? Ah, a good question, my young apprentice. The internal organs are the first parts of the body to decay. By removing them, we can better preserve the body for eternity. But remember, we don't discard them. They are crucial for the deceased in the afterlife. Neku goes on to explain that the organs will be carefully preserved and placed in canopic jars, each protected by one of the four sons of Horus. The heart, however, is left in place, as it is believed to be the seat of intelligence and emotion necessary for the final judgment in the afterlife. As the morning progresses, Neku moves on to the body that's ready for wrapping. This is a delicate and time-consuming process, requiring great skill and patience. Each layer of linen is carefully applied, with amulets and protective spells placed between the layers. As he works, remember, each bandage must be wrapped with intention and care. We are not merely preserving a body, we are preparing a vessel for the soul's eternal journey. The wrapping process will take several days to complete, with hundreds of yards of linen used for a single mummy. As Neku works, he softly chants prayers and spells, infusing each bandage with divine protection. By midday, the workshop is a hive of focused activity. Neku oversees his apprentices as they assist in various stages of the mummification process. Some are grinding herbs and resins for the embalming mixtures, while others are carefully labeling canopic jars with the names and titles of the deceased. To an apprentice struggling with a mixture, not too much myrrh now. Remember, we must balance preservation with the scents that will please the gods. The nose of Anubis is keen, and we want to present the deceased in the most favorable light. As the afternoon heat reaches its peak, Neku calls for a brief rest. The work is physically and emotionally demanding, and it's important to maintain one's strength and focus. The team retreats to a shaded courtyard where they share a simple meal of bread, figs, and cool water from clay jugs. To his team, eat well and rest your minds. Our work honors the dead and ensures the continuity of Ma'at, the divine order of the universe. Each body we prepare is a sacred duty, a link between this world and the next. As they eat, Neku takes the opportunity to teach his apprentices about the religious significance of their work. He speaks of Osiris, the god of the dead, and how each mummy they create is, in a sense, becoming one with Osiris. Just as Osiris was restored by Isis and rose to rule the underworld, so too do we restore these bodies, allowing the deceased to rise and thrive in the afterlife. With the brief respite over, Neku and his team return to their sacred duties. The afternoon will be filled with more delicate work, applying resin to the wrapped mummy, painting the funerary mask, and inscribing protective spells on the coffin. As the sun begins its descent towards the western horizon, Neku knows that his work for the day is far from over. The embalming process is long and complex, often taking up to 70 days from start to finish. But for Neku, it's more than just a job, it's a calling, a sacred duty that bridges the world of the living and the realm of the dead. As we continue our journey through history's most undesirable professions, let's turn our attention to ancient Egypt and the gruesome task of the embalmer. While mummies might seem fascinating to us now, the process of creating them was far from glamorous. In ancient Egyptian society, embalmers held a crucial role in preparing the deceased for their journey to the afterlife. However, their daily work was a messy, smelly, and often revolting affair that would make even the strongest stomachs churn. Let's start with the workspace. As an embalmer, you'd spend your days in a place called the House of Purification, a designated area for mummification. But don't let the name fool you, this place was anything but pure. The air would be thick with the pungent odors of chemicals, decaying flesh, and various aromatic substances used in the process. Your day would begin with the arrival of a fresh corpse. The body would be placed on a slanted embalming table, allowing fluids to drain as you worked. Your first task, removing the brain. But forget about delicate surgical procedures, your method would be far more crude. You'd insert a long, hooked tool through the nose, breaking through the ethmoid bone at the base of the skull. Then, you begin to slowly pull out bits of brain tissue, piece by piece. Any remaining fragments would be liquefied by pouring certain chemicals into the skull cavity, which you then drain out by turning the body face down. With the brain removed, you'd move on to the internal organs. Using a sharp obsidian blade, you'd make an incision along the left side of the abdomen. Reaching inside, you'd remove the lungs, stomach, intestines, and liver. The heart, believed to be the center of intelligence and emotion, would be left in place. These organs weren't discarded, though. You'd carefully wash them in palm wine and aromatic spices before placing them in special canopic jars. These jars, each protected by a specific god, would be buried alongside the mummy to ensure the deceased had everything they needed in the afterlife. Now comes one of the most unpleasant parts of your job, dehydrating the body. You cover the corpse in natron, a naturally occurring salt mixture, and leave it to dry for about 40 days. During this time, you'd need to regularly check on the body, replacing the natron as it became saturated with bodily fluids. The smell during this process would be overwhelming. The combination of decomposing flesh and strong chemicals would permeate your clothes, your hair, and probably even your dreams. No amount of incense or perfume could fully mask this odor, making you a rather unpopular dinner guest. After the desiccation period, you'd remove the natron and begin the restoration process. The body would now be significantly shrunken and darkened. You'd stuff the empty body cavity with linen and aromatic substances like myrrh and cinnamon to help preserve it and restore some semblance of its original shape. Next, you'd carefully wrap the entire body in layers of linen bandages. This wasn't a haphazard process. Each strip would be carefully placed and often inscribed with protective spells from the Book of the Dead. You'd place amulets between the layers for additional spiritual protection. As you wrapped, you'd use a warm mixture of resin and oils to coat the bandages, sealing them together. This sticky, fragrant substance would coat your hands, making the wrapping process increasingly difficult and messy as you progressed. Once fully wrapped, you'd place a death mask over the face of the mummy. For pharaohs and nobility, these could be ornate gold masks, while for others, they might be simple cartonnage masks made from linen and plaster. Your work wasn't quite done yet. You'd need to prepare a detailed report of the embalming process, listing all the procedures performed and materials used. This document would be placed in the tomb with the mummy, ensuring that the gods knew exactly how the deceased had been prepared for the afterlife. As an embalmer, you'd face more than just the physical unpleasantness of your job. Ancient Egyptians held conflicting views about your profession. On one hand, you were respected for your crucial role in preparing the dead for the afterlife. On the other, you were often viewed with suspicion and even fear due to your constant contact with the dead. Many Egyptians believed that embalmers possessed powerful magical knowledge, which could be used for good or ill. This reputation might lead to social isolation, with people avoiding close contact with you out of superstition or disgust. Your work would also take a psychological toll. Constantly dealing with death and grieving families could be emotionally draining. The pressure to perform your duties perfectly would be immense, as any mistakes could potentially jeopardize the deceased's journey to the afterlife. Despite the challenges, your role as an embalmer would be vital to ancient Egyptian society. Your skills would ensure that the dead were properly prepared for their eternal journey, maintaining the balance between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. So the next time you find yourself complaining about your modern-day job, remember the ancient Egyptian embalmer. While you might have to deal with difficult coworkers or tedious meetings, at least you don't spend your days elbow-deep in corpses, surrounded by the overwhelming stench of death and chemicals. Perhaps your current occupation isn't so bad after all. As we continue our journey through the less than glamorous professions of history, we find ourselves back in ancient Egypt, where the sacred art of mummification is nearing its completion. The process of preserving the dead for their journey into the afterlife was a lengthy and intricate one, spanning 70 days from start to finish. We rejoin our embalmer as they enter the final stages of this meticulous ritual. The body has rested in natron for 40 days, drawing out all moisture. Now we must prepare it for its eternal rest. First, let us remove the desiccated organs from their natron bath. The embalmer carefully lifts the canopic jars, each containing a vital organ of the deceased. These organs, now shrunken and dried, were believed to be necessary for the afterlife. The liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines each has its own protective deity. Imseti, Hapi, Duamudef, and Kebesenuf watch over these organs, ensuring their preservation for eternity. With reverence, the embalmer begins to wrap each organ in linen bandages, muttering prayers and incantations as they work. May Anubis guide these organs to the afterlife, where they shall be reunited with their owner in the fields of reeds. The wrapped organs are then carefully placed back into their respective canopic jars, which will be entombed alongside the mummy. Now we must tend to the body itself. The natron has done its work well, leaving the corpse dry and shriveled. We shall restore its form with linen and resin. The embalmer begins the painstaking process of padding the body with linen, sawdust, and even mud, carefully reshaping it to resemble its living form. The pharaoh must look regal even in death. We shall stuff the cheeks and reshape the nose, ensuring that his face maintains its noble visage for all eternity. Hours pass as the embalmer meticulously rebuilds the body's contours. Once satisfied with the shape, they begin the intricate process of wrapping. We start with the head and neck, wrapping each finger and toe individually. Layer upon layer of fine linen, each strip anointed with oils and resins to preserve and protect. The wrapping process is an art form in itself, requiring great skill and patience. The embalmer works tirelessly, ensuring that each bandage is applied with precision. Between layers, we place amulets and charms to ward off evil spirits and guide the deceased through the underworld. The scarab over the heart, the jed pillar for stability, the ankh for eternal life. As the wrapping continues, the body slowly transforms into the iconic form we recognize as a mummy. The embalmer pauses periodically to recite prayers and perform small rituals, infusing each step with sacred meaning. Great Osiris, judge of the dead, we prepare this vessel for its journey. May it pass through the gates of the underworld and find peace in the afterlife. The final layers of bandages are applied, and the embalmer steps back to inspect their work. The once recognizable human form is now a tightly wrapped cocoon of linen, ready for its golden mask and sarcophagus. The body is prepared, but our work is not yet complete. We must now create the mask that will protect the pharaoh's face for eternity. The embalmer turns their attention to crafting the elaborate funerary mask. This iconic piece of art will cover the mummy's head and shoulders, depicting the idealized features of the deceased. Gold leaf and precious stones, lapis lazuli for the eyes, carnelian for the mouth. Each element has meaning, each color a symbol of divine protection. With painstaking care, the embalmer applies the gold leaf to the mask, smoothing each sheet until it gleams. The process is time-consuming, requiring a steady hand and unwavering focus. The Neem's headdress, symbol of pharaonic power, adorns the brow. The uraeus serpent, protector of kings, rises from the forehead. This mask will ensure that the pharaoh is recognized by the gods in the afterlife. As the mask nears completion, the embalmer begins to inscribe sacred texts and spells onto its surface. These hieroglyphs will serve as a passport through the underworld, helping the deceased navigate the challenges that await. The Book of the Dead provides guidance. We inscribe the spells that will allow the pharaoh to breathe, to eat, to move freely in the afterlife. Each word is a key, unlocking the doors to eternal paradise. With the mask complete, the embalmer carefully places it over the mummy's wrapped head. The transformation is striking. What was once a shapeless form of linen now bears the radiant visage of a god-king. The body is ready, the mask is in place. Now we must prepare the sarcophagus, the eternal home of the pharaoh's earthly remains. The sarcophagus, a masterpiece of craftsmanship, has been prepared in advance. Its surfaces are covered in intricate paintings and hieroglyphs, each telling a story of the pharaoh's life and the journey that awaits in the afterlife. We line the sarcophagus with fresh linen and fragrant herbs. Natron packets are placed strategically to continue absorbing any remaining moisture. With utmost care, the embalmer and their assistants lift the mummy and lower it into the sarcophagus. The fit is perfect, as if the pharaoh is simply lying down to sleep. Great Pharaoh, your earthly journey is complete. May Anubis guide you to the Hall of Two Truths, where Osiris awaits to judge your heart. May you find eternal peace in the fields of reeds. The embalmer places the canopic jars and other funerary objects around the mummy. Each item has been chosen with care, intended to serve the pharaoh in the afterlife. Your favorite possessions, your tools of office, food and drink for sustenance, all accompany you on this final journey. May they serve you well in the world beyond. With a final prayer, the embalmer prepares to seal the sarcophagus. This marks the end of their sacred duty, a process that has spanned more than 2 months of dedicated work. We seal this sarcophagus with the blessings of Isis and Nephthys. May it remain undisturbed for all eternity, protecting the pharaoh's ka until the day of resurrection. As the heavy lid is lowered into place, the embalmer steps back, their task complete. The mummified pharaoh now begins his journey into the afterlife, leaving behind a perfectly preserved vessel for his eventual return. Our work is done. May the gods look favorably upon our efforts and grant the pharaoh safe passage through the underworld. And so concludes the intricate and sacred process of mummification. a ritual that defined ancient Egyptian beliefs about death and the afterlife. The embalmer's role, though often overlooked, was crucial in ensuring the eternal existence of pharaohs and nobles alike. Their skilled hands and deep knowledge of religious rites bridged the gap between the world of the living and the realm of the dead, preserving Egypt's greatest for all eternity. As we conclude our journey through the gruesome world of ancient Egyptian embalmers, it's clear that this profession was not for the faint of heart. The meticulous process of mummification, while revered in its time, would be considered a nightmare job by today's standards. Let's recap the challenges that would make it nearly impossible for a modern person to last even a day as an ancient Egyptian embalmer. First and foremost, the constant exposure to death and decay would be overwhelming. Handling corpses day in and day out, surrounded by the pungent odors of decomposition and embalming chemicals, would test even the strongest stomachs. The physical demands of the job were equally daunting. Embalmers worked long hours in hot, stuffy environments, often in underground chambers with poor ventilation. The precision required for removing organs and preparing the body demanded intense concentration and steady hands, even in these uncomfortable conditions. Then there's the psychological toll. Embalmers were intimately acquainted with the fragility of life, constantly reminded of mortality as they prepared the dead for their journey to the afterlife. This constant exposure to death could lead to emotional detachment or profound existential crises, neither of which would be easy to cope with. The social stigma associated with the profession would also be difficult to bear. Despite the importance of their work, embalmers were often viewed as unclean or cursed. This social isolation could be psychologically damaging, especially in a society that placed such high value on community and social standing. Let's not forget the religious and spiritual pressure. Embalmers bore the immense responsibility of ensuring the deceased's passage to the afterlife. Any mistake in the complex rituals or mummification process could have dire consequences for the soul of the departed. This level of spiritual accountability would be an enormous burden to carry. The use of primitive tools and techniques would also pose significant challenges. Without modern medical knowledge or equipment, embalmers had to rely on crude instruments and traditional methods. The physical toll of using these tools, combined with the precision required, would be exhausting and frustrating for someone accustomed to modern technology. Moreover, the lack of understanding about disease transmission and proper sanitation would put embalmers at constant risk of infection. The absence of protective equipment and the frequent contact with bodily fluids made this profession extremely hazardous to one's health. In conclusion, while the role of an ancient Egyptian embalmer was crucial to their society and religious beliefs, it's clear that a modern person would struggle immensely to adapt to this profession. The combination of physical, psychological, and social challenges, along with the constant exposure to death and decay, would make it nearly impossible for most of us to last even a single day in this ancient and demanding role. As we drift off to sleep, let's be grateful for the advancements in medical science and workplace safety that separate us from the gruesome realities of ancient professions like embalming. Sweet dreams, and may your sleep be free of mummies and ancient curses. As we conclude our exploration of Viking raider life, we shift our focus to another fascinating historical period. But before we do, take a moment to reflect on the harsh realities we've uncovered. The Viking Age, while romanticized, was filled with challenges that would overwhelm most modern individuals. Now, let's journey forward in time to uncover more intriguing historical truths that might surprise you. As we conclude our journey through these seemingly mundane yet intriguing historical facts, it's worth pondering the deeper implications of what we've learned. The Viking raiders, medieval peasants, and ancient Egyptians we've discussed may seem distant and disconnected from our modern lives, but their experiences offer valuable insights into the human condition. Consider how the harsh realities of Viking life shaped their culture and worldview. The constant struggle for survival in unforgiving environments fostered a sense of community and resilience that we might find admirable, even as we recoil from their more violent tendencies. Their raids, while brutal, were often born out of necessity and a desire for a better life, a motivation not so different from the aspirations we hold today. The medieval peasants, toiling endlessly in fields and living in squalid conditions, remind us of the progress we've made in terms of quality of life and social mobility. Yet their simple existence also highlights how our modern comforts have distanced us from the natural rhythms of the earth and the satisfaction of physical labor. Perhaps there's a lesson here about finding balance in our increasingly digital and sedentary world. The ancient Egyptians, with their complex beliefs and elaborate burial practices, demonstrate the universal human desire to find meaning in life and to leave a lasting legacy. Their monumental architecture and intricate artwork continue to captivate us millennia later, serving as a testament to the enduring power of human creativity and ambition. As we reflect on these historical snippets, we might ask ourselves, what aspects of our current society will future generations find equally fascinating or perplexing? How will they judge our values, our daily routines, or our relationship with technology? Just as we struggle to fully comprehend the mindset of people from past eras, future historians may grapple with understanding our motivations and beliefs. Moreover, these historical anecdotes remind us of the resilience and adaptability of the human spirit. Despite facing challenges that would seem insurmountable to us today, our ancestors persevered, innovated, and laid the foundations for the world we now inhabit. This should give us hope as we face our own global challenges, from climate change to social inequality. In the end, while the details of history may sometimes appear dull or disconnected from our lives, they offer us a mirror through which we can examine our own society and values. By understanding where we've come from, we gain valuable perspective on where we are and where we might be heading. As you drift off to sleep, consider the threads that connect you to those who came before, the shared hopes, fears, and dreams that make us fundamentally human. In doing so, you might find a deeper appreciation for your place in the grand tapestry of human history.